What is happening out there, Roto Scouts baseball fans? Happy opening day, gang. We made it. Finally. The long slog of the NBA season, not quite behind us. Another 3 weeks or so of regular season left. But man, it is so refreshing to be dealing with a sport where, I don't know, the game on the screen. What time does this game start? Game on the screen starts at 4:10 this afternoon. And we already know who's playing for both teams. How about that? Shocking. What a revelation. What a refreshing sport. So much better. Obviously, this won't be the case all year. It is opening day. Sometimes we get the lineups more like an hour ahead of lock. But we typically have a lot more sanity going on, at least on this side of lock, when it comes to baseball. We all know where things go once lock hits, once these games start. Chaotic sport. But man, am I glad to be back. Handful of people here hanging out already. Love it. Andy's here. Anthony Taylor. Cujo. Aggressive Goose. Good to see everybody. I'm sure we'll have some more people coming in throughout the show here. We did a 100-plus minute show, hour 40, just last night on this slate. Went through a lot. Talked about a lot of the projected lineups. Talked some pitching. Made some changes overnight. Changed up some of the projected, and then obviously we've got a lot of confirmed lineups to talk through. I updated all the Vegas lines, updated some pitching projections. So we are going to get into this thing, and we're going to go top down and do the entire thing in probably a little bit more depth than we did last night. But if you want a slightly faster, shorter version, you can check out last night's show. It's still sitting there. Got a solid view count on it. I appreciate everybody who checked it out. I appreciate anybody who's here right now hitting the little thumbs up down there, the like button as we get started. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here, and I'll try and go as light as I can promoting things, but rotoscouts.com is the website. MLB, NBA, NHL right now, NFL when it comes back, season-long content for MLB, anything else that strikes my fancy and goes up on the website, all in price, under $1 a day for all of it. No per sport fees, no surprises. Hey, it costs $1 a day this week, but next week it's $10 a day. None of that nonsense. Under $1 a day, access on a weekly, monthly, or quarterly plan. Check it out, rotoscouts.com. Had a bunch of people jump in yesterday. Really appreciate every single one of you guys. So let's talk some baseball. The biggest change on the pitching board is right here. A lot more discussion about Sandy Alcantara's pitch count than I initially caught. So I trimmed a significant chunk away from Sandy, and when we resort, he's going to dip down the board a little bit. Still love the pitcher, but I think we're going to be limited probably in like the 75-80 range. He had gotten up into the upper 50s at the end of spring, and then he had one like non-official game, like throwing on the backfields kind of outing. So we're probably dealing with about that kind of a pitch count. So he came down a little bit. Other than that, just some tweaks around the edges. We had a little bit of line movement that impacted a couple of the projections. So a little bit of movement between, all this giant group of guys between 29 and 30 FanDuel points, between 15 and 18 DraftKings points. A little bit of shuffling in just who's in what order. But we do have a wide swath of pitchers who look very similar. And you can play the price and popularity game on this slate pretty much to your heart's content. We've obviously got aces galore on opening day. So there's a lot to work with. Some high price pitching, but there's a lot of really good bargains. Called out a few of them yesterday. Some of them are getting pretty popular. Mr. Kikuchi right here, looking very solid. Going up against a completely inept White Sox lineup. They are drawing a little bit of power upside because of his history of giving up a lot of home runs that we looked at yesterday, that we've talked about a ton over the years. But man, that price is aggressively good, $6,900 for a guy who has plenty of strikeout stuff, tons of DFS upside, and was brought into LA to be the number one. So I really like it on DK, despite a lot of popularity. As your number two to pair with any of these guys, just looks fantastic. I think you could get away with Logan Webb in that capacity as well at 75, though. That's not a terrible price, even in that bandbox ballpark. I don't love the environment that he's going to be pitching in, but there are Ks in that Reds lineup for him to go find. That's not a bad price to find Logan Webb, also as a SP2 kind of caliber guy. Same deal with Hunter Evaldi and Nathan Green, or, as they're actually named, Nathan Evaldi and Hunter Green. It's early. Still caffeinating the old brain. Cheers, everybody. Happy opening day. But we do have, I talked about it yesterday, the Red Sox drawing some pretty solid projections up and down the lineup, actually topping out in our just projection aggregator, the top stacks tool, where it's just essentially averaging out the top, or adding up the top overall projections for everybody. Red Sox are really topping out that board. And I looked at it, and there's really nothing I wanted to peel back from it. I have a healthy respect for Eovaldi as a pitcher, but I'm kind of leaning Bo Sox lineup over him right now. But that price, again, is pretty interesting at 72. Same with Hunter Green, not a trustworthy pitcher, also pitching in that bandbox that is his home ballpark. A lot of K upside, but tons of walks, kind of problematic. I think you're a lot safer with either of these two, and we're not necessarily just looking safety, of course, but these are two upside pitchers that are a lot safer, I think, than some of these downboard guys. So it depends on what you're looking for in that role. Obviously, the four guys at the top of the board, Paul Skeens, Chris Sale, Garrett Crochet, and Zach Wheeler. Any one of those guys, absolute dynamite on both sites for the price, for the popularity. Just go there. They're the best, several of the best pitchers in all of baseball for a very good reason. You've got very different matchups for a couple of them, though. Chris Sale going up against the Padres. Little bit of potential to limit his strikeout upside, but he's Chris Sale. My money's on him being able to overcome that, and I've got him projecting out really, really strong in fewer pitches than a lot of the other guys on the board. So I really like the Chris Sale spot for the money. I think Wheeler going up against Washington is really interesting. 9,500 on DraftKings, that'll play. You can argue that Crochet and Sale both have more strikeout upside for a cheaper price. But Wheeler's got the better matchup against the Nats. Now, I will call out that Nats lineup is pretty improved up at the top. But definitely, Zach Wheeler in that spot should be able to succeed. 10-8, I think I'd rather have Chris Sale on FanDuel at 10-7 than Wheeler at 10-8. It's the same conversation, basically, on DraftKings at 9-5 versus 9-3. But it stands out a little bit more on FanDuel, where we're only getting the one bite at the apple, and we're putting a pretty big spend on the pitching there. Crochet looks fantastic. He's absolutely deserves all of his flowers that he's been getting. He was phenomenal last year. But I called it out yesterday, and I'm going to mention it again. It's less impactful for today, but just in the long term, I really worry about what that arm is going to look like this year. And we looked at it yesterday. He basically tripled his career high in innings, and this is already a rebuilt arm. He's already had Tommy John. So I really am a little bit skeptical about the long-term viability. But excellent pitcher while we've got him. Projects out as one of the top options on the board. And among the top starters, he's the cheapest guy. 96 FanDuel, 9,000 DraftKings. Just play him. Not a pushover lineup on the other side. Texas, relatively low strikeout. A lot of power upside. We'll see how guys like Adolis Garcia do this year. He greatly underperformed last year, but the year before he hit 39 home runs and was one of the best players in baseball. So we'll see how we come up. There's a lot to work with up at the top of the board. Andy likes Crochet on FanDuel. Yeah, and again, that, as stated, that is more of a long-term concern. There is nothing in the world wrong with Crochet. He is fully healthy right now. This is me just speculating in the long term about the health of a rebuilt arm that tripled its career high in innings. He was a converted reliever. He went from being a reliever to a starter, so you're just talking about different kinds of workloads. We'll see how it responds. But yeah, 9,600, love the price. 9,000, love the price. But again, not the best matchup. We'll dive into that in a little bit. But really strong options there. Fromber, I don't love the FanDuel price on Fromber at 10-1, but at 8-3 on DraftKings, that'll play, even in a tough matchup against the Mets. And yes, it is a tough matchup against the Mets this year. Cole Ragans, we talked about it yesterday, kind of an interesting spot. There's a lot more strikeouts in Cleveland than we're used to now. There are still a couple of elite Steven Kwan, Jose Ramirez, particularly at the top of the lineup, guys at limiting strikeouts. But by and large, that is a much more strikeout-laden lineup than it's been for the last few seasons. So that could be maybe a little bit, I don't want to use the word sneaky because Cole Ragans is a top ace that people know to go to, but maybe the matchup pushes people away, especially at that $8,600 price. Just kind of interesting on the DraftKings slate. Freddie Peralta, 82 on FanDuel. By the way, 2 games on the FanDuel slate starting at 3 o'clock that are not on the DraftKings slate, which starts at 4. It's 11 games FanDuel, 9 games DraftKings. So you get Freddie Peralta, you get Carlos Rodon, you get, who are the other 2? Jose Barrios and Mackenzie Gore. Wait, no, that's not right. Why is Mackenzie Gore not coming up on DraftKings? Just notice that. Am I losing it? That game's on DraftKings, isn't it? Hang on. It's not a problem because we've got a projection. I just don't know why that price isn't displaying. 2, 3, and then why is the price displaying for Baltimore? What the hell is going on? I'm confused as to why that salary is not popping up there, but we'll move on. We won't worry about it. We'll fix it in post. So a lot to work with down the bottom of the board as well. You know, really talented pitchers like Michael King, but going up against a really good Braves lineup. And you start to question some of the upside around like Jose Barrios, who's a kind of mid-overrated type of a pitcher, going up against a very good Baltimore lineup. Mackenzie Gore going up against the Phillies. A little bit of problems there, but the price is obviously very cheap. I don't love the matchup for Clay Holmes, but I really like Clay Holmes' season-long upside. Just a bad starting point after a very, very hot spring, running into that Houston lineup that is super low strikeout. But he's excellent at 6,000 on DraftKings, even with that in mind. I do think he's very playable on the DK slate as an SP2. Tanner Bybee, Sandy Alcantara, with the innings cut from Sandy, he drops to the bottom of the board. And then Bybee, just kind of a difficult matchup against the low strikeout Royals. I brought this up yesterday, but just as a reminder, March baseball, we're dealing with some very, very low run totals. We do have the Orioles and the Blue Jays creeping up to 8.5 up in Toronto. The 2 highest implied totals of the day, or 2 of the 3 highest, I guess I should say. The Yanks at 4.35, a little bit higher. But there's definitely a lot of offensive upside and firepower in that game. I like the Yankees for DFS reasons. I like the Yankees. I should cover the Yankees 96 championship t-shirt that I'm wearing too. But I think that lineup has enough firepower even against Freddie Peralta, especially in Yankee Stadium. So there's upside there. 2 teams in the bandbox in Cincinnati, both projected or both implied over 4 runs. Very interesting to me there. The Angels, we're definitely going to dive into in a little bit. Implied over 4 runs. Super popular, but there's some really interesting bats later in the lineup that are not quite as popular, including today's home run pick. And then, as mentioned, the Red Sox really pulling some strong DFS projections. Might change if Tristan Casas isn't in the lineup. He's dealing with a hand issue. Still no confirmed lineup there. We did just get another 3 in, though. But despite being under a 4 total, that is still one of the higher marks on the board. Not highest, because you got these couple 3.9s here with KC and with Houston. But the Red Sox will play today, and they're not very popular. So they're drawing my eye a little bit. They're actually in my placeholder lineup right now. Oh, thanks, Den. Dennis calls out Tanner Bybee, food poisoning, scratched. Bybee out. Appreciate that. So let's see. That is going to be, who's the new? Ben Lively taking the start. Give me one sec to what are you going to do? We're going to go here. Talk amongst yourselves one sec. Let me grab Ben Lively. We'll pop him in here real quick. All credit goes to Seth in the Discord. Yeah, let me drop a link to the Discord. If you're new, hop into our Discord. Discord's always free for everybody. Trying to get a nice little community going. Good group of people hanging out in there as regulars, but always could use some new takes, new jokes, new memes, etc. All right, let me grab Ben Lively here. He's probably not on this yet. I mention it every year, including earlier this spring already. But even if you never go to their website, take a moment and go over to Fangraphs and give them a little subscription. It doesn't cost much. And this is after you subscribe at rotoscouts, of course. But Fangraphs really feeds data for this entire industry. And I really encourage people to check them out. They do great work over there. So they could use some support. All right, let's get Mr. Bybee out of here. Ben Lively. Fun part of the show. All right. I haven't really looked into Ben Lively. I'm just going to give him 5 here on the innings. Not much of a projection for him, obviously, because he's Ben Lively. So that'll give us a new worst pitcher on the board, I think. Oh, you know what? Let me see what the hell. Oh, there he is. Oh, shoot. I forgot I took that, pulled that off the screen. All right, coming back. Pitching change. So Ben Lively falls down to the very bottom of the board. He's 7,900 somehow on FanDuel. He's 7,000 on DraftKings. I don't think you need to go there against what was already a bad matchup going up against KC for a much better pitcher in Tanner Bybee. So no real change there. Just kind of scratch a name off the board. EMAC in the house. Mr. McPherson. 1, 2, 3, 4. Subscribe to Rotoscouts. Then 5. Get that free ad-free Fangraphs injected right into your veins, seam heads. Love it. Yeah, I flipped it off when I was just updating the back end there. We had the screen was up before that, EMAC. Appreciate the production notes though. Good to see you, pal. All right, so let's get back into this thing a little bit here. Still got to figure out why. I got to figure out why Mackenzie Gore's salary is not coming up there. Is that spot just dead? There it is. That's why. Let's just make sure that that's... All right, so that answers that. But then why is... where's Eflin? For some reason, Zach Eflin's not appearing on this board. Which is very, very... Oh! That's where he's supposed to be. It's really weird. I don't know what happened there. Huh. Something screwy with that reference. All right. Doesn't matter. It's just on that board. He's projected. He's in the file. He's in the projections. He's on the website. So we won't sweat it. Let's see if we got the Brewers lineup in. Yankees lineup is here. Oh, we've got a ton of lineups. Man, do I love this. We do have the Brewers. Let's grab it. Jackson Churio up at the top as planned. So an interesting pitching matchup to get us started here with Carlos Rodon going up against Freddy Peralta. Neither guy topping out the board, but Peralta's right in that mix of guys between 29 and 35 points on FanDuel, between 15 and 18 on DraftKings, but he's toward the lower end of it. 27.6% strikeouts last year, 9.4% walk rate. Does have a little bit of a challenge around walks, also a little bit of challenge around being a fly ball pitcher in Yankee Stadium, pitching to this lineup. 3.59% home run rate last year. That's not egregiously bad, but it's high for an ace, and you can see it comes on a 17.3 degree average launch. So there are a couple of warts with Freddy Peralta for sure. 3.68 ERA, but a 3.93 xFIP. You're a lot closer to a 4-run number there. The year before, 3.86 ERA, but a 3.42 xFIP. He was a lot better the year before. 30.9% strikeout rate with a 7.9% walk. So we got worse in walks. We came down in strikeouts. We went up in xFIP. Home run rate around the same, technically slightly lower. But there are some issues there. He is going up against a Yankees lineup that's got plenty of Ks in it, though, 23.2% for this confirmed version of the Yankees lineup. We do, by the way, get confirmed Austin Wells, the first catcher to ever hit leadoff in any lineup. We're talking about thousands, tens of thousands of Yankees lineups over the years, over more than 100-year history. First time a catcher's ever hit leadoff is today. Austin Wells. Crazy. But there are a lot of strikeouts. Wells included. He's 21% league average-ish. Even Judge, 24% last year, 28% the year before, but obviously elite power. Cody Bellinger does not strike out. That's a nice add to the heart of the Yankees lineup there. But then you go right into Goldschmidt, Jazzy, Jason Dominguez, Ben Rice down the bottom of the lineup, all in the upper to mid-20s. So there's a lot of Ks for Freddie to go find if he's on form. But it's also a fairly patient lineup. I forgot it doesn't have Juan Soto in it anymore, so I got to say fairly patient. But like Judge, monster walk rate. Austin Wells, very strong walk rate. This is part of why he's in that leadoff role. 322 on base and 11.4% walk last year. You do dip a little bit in walks around these two less patient hitters, but you've got some patient guys potentially down the back end of the lineup. We'll see. Obviously, Jason Dominguez doesn't count for that, but Ben Rice, definitely some plate discipline through the minors. So we'll see. The Yanks could find their walks, could work their way to first base. It's also just part of the way that the Yankees go about the games is trying to see a lot of pitches. Tons of power upside for the Yanks, obviously. Aaron Judge at 14.90 leads the entire day in the home run model today. He's not the home run pick of the day because I don't get cheesy that way and just go Judge or Soto or Shohei every day. But you could easily have gone that way. 4,500 on the FanDuel slate, not on the DraftKings slate. This game does not exist on DK. Yanks, highly stackable, rate out pretty well on the stacks board. If you're going there, I think Wells is playable, but I don't know that I love occupying the util spot or the catcher first base spot with that bat. I think I'd probably lean like Judge, Bellinger, Jazzy, and then maybe one of the interesting players from the bottom like Dominguez or maybe Volpe, depending on what you want to do at short. But Wells, very playable. Would be more interesting on DraftKings where, catcher mandatory and unique position. But the kid was good last year. 13 home runs and 414 plate appearances, a 105 WRC+. Obviously, Judge is all-world, 58 home runs, 322, 458, 701 last year at 379 ISO. You just play Aaron Judge. It's Aaron Judge. Bellinger with outfield and first base for just 3,300 is kind of interesting. 18 homers last year, 9 stolen bases. A decent year last year, 109 WRC+. Year before, a little bit better. 218 ISO with a 134 WRC+ in his big bounce back year out in Chicago. 307, 356, 525 looked like the former MVP that he is. 26 homers, 20 steals. So a little bit of a dip last year that the Yankees signed him off of. Definitely some question marks, but monster upside. Lefty bat in Yankee Stadium is obviously ideal. Could be in for a big year from Cody, but I definitely want to see it. Goldschmidt is, signs of decline over the last couple of years. 22 home runs last year, just a 167 ISO. But coming into this lineup in Yankee Stadium could be a little bit of a shot in the arm. The power is still there to at least some degree. The swing is still there to at least some degree. Last year, 10.6%. Barrels, 48.1% hard hits. So a lot of upside for Goldie, and 2,900, honestly, pretty cheap. You can see it's not a monster number in the home run mark, but it's not bad for today's slate. Jazz Chisholm's really interesting. Fills 3 positions on FanDuel, 3,100, 24 home runs, 40 stolen bases last year in his best full season. Big move to New York. Really like the player. Really like the skill set for DFS. Love the spot in the lineup. A lefty bat with power upside in Yankee Stadium. Everything about Jazz Chisholm Jr. this year definitely speaks to me on this side of opening day. Jason Dominguez. We saw him rocket to stardom for about, a week and a half 2 years ago. Saw a cup of coffee at the end of last season for 67 plate appearances, but had blown out his arm 2 years back. Missed the end of that season. Was in the minors after rehabbing for all of last year, or basically all of last year. Did hit 2 home runs, stole 5 bags in his 67 plate appearances in the show. We expect big things. Kid's one of the top prospects in the game. Volpe, mix and match player at best. Counting stats, sure, 12 home runs, 28 stolen bases last year. Just a 293 on base. He lacks a lot of skills. There is quality there. to some degree. He had a very strong postseason run. So there's hope that he comes around a little bit. Still a young player. And there are definitely positive indicators. And for DFS, you can kind of just rely on the counting stats, but not a priority. And occupying shortstop, even though you're just getting cheap with it, not the best fill for that position, I don't think. I do like the upside for Ben Rice, 7 home runs last year in just 178 plate appearances. Obviously was weak in the slash line, 171, 264, 349, but it's got a lot of pop in that bat and does have a lot of plate discipline. Also having a pretty strong spring, coming in as the regular DH for the Yankees right now, at least while Stanton is on the IL. Stanton did start swinging today, but he's going to be gone for quite a while. And then Ozzie Cabrera in at third base is entirely skippable for DFS purposes. He's just here basically because he defends a number of different positions and they can move him around the lineup. This is not a hitter. 247, 296, 365, and 88 WRC plus, 8 homers, 4 steals, and 326. It's a half a season, essentially. Not much of a bat. Could get there on any given slate. Obviously, there's always that upside in baseball, so you can include him in some of your Yankee stacks. If you're building an abundance of Yankee stacks, you want to throw him into at least one, but he's not a priority. Carlos Rodon, 3.96 ERA, but a 4.09 xFIP. It's about what we expect these days from Rodon. He also had a little bit of a home run issue last year, 4.21% home run rate. Also a fly ball pitcher, gave up a ton of barrels. Can get problematic in Yankee Stadium. There is power in this Brewers lineup as well. So Milwaukee, not off the board for FanDuel players. 9.31 in the home run model for Jackson Chourio. William Contreras checking in with one of the better marks on the board, and then Rhys Hoskins at 9.41. They've got 3 guys that are not topping the entire board, but kind of interesting. Oh, this was the board I cut down to the other day for a tweet. So a few more guys crept over the 10 mark in the home run model as things changed. But that's it. We've got 5 guys over the magic number, and then a big swath of guys between 8.5 and 9.89. And several of those guys are coming from Milwaukee. Technically Contreras right there. But maybe a little bit of an underrated power spot. Chourio is fantastic. 21 homers, 22 steals last year, a 117 WRC plus, and he is just getting started. Kid is phenomenal. Yelich, still highly, highly playable. Last season, in half a season, 315 plate appearances, he hit 315, 406, 504, 153 WRC plus with 11 homers, 21 stolen bases, and still premium contact galore. Doesn't strike out, draws a ton of walks. Christian Yelich never was bad. He just wasn't the 40 home run guy, and people thought he was bad. Too many ground balls for a little while. Was hurt for a little while. When he's healthy and in the lineup, still an excellent bat. Contreras, one of the top catcher bats in all of baseball, hits the ball very hard, nearly a 50% hard hit rate last year, 23 home runs, an excellent triple slash. Just play him. He is one of the top catchers, 3,600. You can easily go there and just pretend he's a power hitting first baseman. Rhys Hoskins, speaking of power hitting first baseman, jacked 26 home runs and had a 205 ISO last year. Just ignore the rest of everything he does. You only expect home run hitting out of Rhys Hoskins. The bottom half of this lineup is kind of meh. Garrett Mitchell was surprised being in there against a lefty. I wasn't necessarily expecting him to go that route. There is a lot of talent there. 8 home runs, 11 steals in just 224 plate appearances last year. Had a 214 ISO. I do expect big things out of Mitchell, but starting out lefty-lefty against a talented enough lefty in Carlos Rodon, not the best spot in the world for him, but out of those guys down toward the bottom, he's probably the most appealing. You get Bryce Turang in the 9 spot. He stole 50 bases last year. Otherwise, was pretty mediocre. 7 home runs in 619 plate appearances, just an 87 WRC plus. Nobody's idea of a slate breaker, but could get on, steal a couple bags, score some runs. As a correlated scoring piece for 3,000 at second base, he's all right. Joey Ortiz, Vinny Capra, mix and match guys. 25 people here hanging out. That's 1 game down. Half hour in, 1 game down. Brendan Coons, cousin Bren. What's going on, buddy? Happy opening day to you too, pal. Let's go Yanks. Tell your dad I said happy opening day as well. I'm sure he's going to be watching. Emax said the proprietary model must remain hidden. Very good, very good. Orioles and the Blue Jays. Let's see if we got the Baltimore lineup. We probably do. Oh, yeah, we got... Nope, actually, we don't have that one. We've got basically every other lineup on the board. So as far as pitching goes, this game, not that appealing for pitching. For one, this was, as we looked at the Vegas board before, the highest run total at 8.5 on the entire slate. That's not a crazy high run total overall, but for today it is. And we're dealing with mediocrity as far as the pitchers. Looking at the numbers, and I illustrated this yesterday on the show, these guys are essentially the same pitcher. There's really not much difference between 19.6, 19.5, 6.9. The 3.5 walk rate is probably the biggest difference between these two guys. Eflin doesn't walk as many hitters, but they had the exact same whip despite that. 3.60 versus a 3.59 ERA, 92.15, 92.38 by Stuff Plus, 3 and change home run ratings. These guys are the same mediocre, okay major league pitcher, but not a great DFS option kind of a guy. For 78, for 8.5, could you play them? Sure. But I don't know that I want to throw mediocre pitchers into either of these lineups. If I was targeting one of these teams, I'd rather have a pitcher against the Blue Jays than against the Orioles. But if I was targeting one of these pitchers, I would slightly probably lean toward Jose Barrios. So it doesn't really work out that way. I'm kind of skipping pitching in this game. I really don't see it. You can see it in the projections. Not great. So it's mostly bats. Really like the upside for the Orioles. They grade out as one of the top stacks of the day. Top stacks tool, by the way, is up on the website. It includes the points ranking, which is essentially just aggregating all the fantasy points, a value score for both sites, as well as the home run ranking and the home run averages. So right now, Baltimore is the number 1 FanDuel value team, because they're not that expensive for all the talent. They top out the most expensive guy, $3,200. Tyler O'Neill, $3,200. Jordan Westberg. You're getting Adley cheaper than that. There's no Gunnar Henderson in the lineup. That's why they look a little cheaper than they might otherwise look. But you've got some really talented players here. Solid crop of home run totals there. Nothing overwhelming. Tyler O'Neill's 31 came with the Red Sox last year. Highly likely to be first or second on the team in home runs again this year. Love the power bat. That 31 came in only 473 plate appearances. He's just injury prone. He's a little bit oopsie prone. But when he's in the lineup, speaking of oopsie, the ridiculous ability to make phenomenal contact with the baseball trumps anything else. 270 ISO last year, a 131 WRC plus, hit 31 homers. It's absolutely fantastic. Right-handed bats should have a little bit of a bump this year. In this game's in Toronto, so it doesn't matter as much. But in their home park, when they are at home, it should help out the righty bats because they move that left field wall in. So that'll help O'Neill, that'll help Mountcastle, and so on. But that doesn't matter today. Colton Cowser, just $2,700. Pretty cheap for a dude who hit 24 home runs, stole 9 bases, had a 204 ISO, and created runs 20% better than average last year. Kid was one of their higher-end prospects and spent most of the year up last year, or all of the year, 561 plate appearances, and comported himself pretty well. There's a lot of power from the left side of the plate there, going up against a mediocre righty who can allow plenty of home runs, but he has a lot of nearly 4% home run rate last year. The stuff doesn't grade out well. You can throw some lefty bats at him. Adley had a weird year. He did hit 19 home runs. He created runs in a positive sense, 4% better than average. And these are good numbers for a catcher, but they're not quite the numbers that I think reputationally one might have expected him to end up with, as far as the triple slash anyway. But an excellent, excellent catcher bat who's in there every single day. Absolutely playable at 3,000. Westberg getting 2 positions out of him, not bad. I don't like that he's the highest price guy on the team. 18 home runs, 6 stolen bases last year, a 216 ISO, 125 WRC plus, though. I mean, he came up and he earned that job, and he held on to it for most of the season. So I don't mind the bat. O'Hearn, just a solid, cheap lefty. This is just essentially around this price at all times, despite having a pretty decent 2 seasons. 119 WRC plus last year with 15 home runs. Year before, he was better. 14 home runs. I don't know. Actually, it's better in the triple slash. But the home run total was actually 1 fewer, and the WRC plus was as well. Triple slash the year before was 289, 322, 480. Toward the bottom of the Orioles lineup, they do have a 1 through 9 lineup, in my opinion, as far as DFS, assuming this is the lineup we get. Cedric Mullins, former 30-30 guy last year, 18 homers, 32 stolen bases. Another guy you just kind of ignore the rest of that line. Did create runs in a positive sense. That's all we really care about. Also doesn't strike out that much. So puts bat on ball a decent amount of the time for a guy with a little bit of pop. Ramon Urias. There's enough power in that bat to get by. In 301 plate appearances last year, he had 11 homers, had a 169 ISO. He does have upside on any given slate. He's always dirt cheap, 2,300, fills 3 positions. Just a solid utility guy to be able to move around, fill out some stacks with. And then Jackson Holliday, uber talented prospect last year, one of the top prospects in all of baseball, son of former major leaguer Matt Holliday. Justin Casas in the lineup for the Red Sox. We're about to get there. So Holliday at just 2,500 obviously was abysmal last year in 208 plate appearances, 5 home runs, 4 steals, terrible across the board, but the chance to come right back and just reclaim his everything that he's supposed to be. Very, very cheap, interesting bat at 2,500. On the Blue Jays side, it's Vladdy Guerrero at 3,900. You just go there. 30 home runs, 221 ISO, 165 WRC plus. Still negotiating for his big extension, but about to get about $500 million for the next 15 years or so of baseball from somebody, probably the Blue Jays. He's fantastic. You just play Vladdy Guerrero, and then most of the bats around him, pretty affordable. Bo Bichette, coming off of a terrible half of a season in 336 plate appearances, down to just $2,800. He could come roaring back to life this year. So that's not a bad pairing off the top. That immediately averages you down. Now you're getting Vladdy for 33. And then you get Santander right in that same price range. You're at 33 average. And then you go Jimenez and you bring your total cost down even further. Right? Top 4 in the Blue Jays lineup costs $3,100 apiece, and you get Bo Bichette and Vladdy Guerrero and Anthony Santander in it. If you want to skip Andres Jimenez and jump down to, let's say, George Springer, who was also bad last year, you're still at just a $3,200 spend. So this is a decent value lineup. You do have Alan Roden, their 5th ranked prospect, I want to say. Made the team out of camp, kind of a surprise, just $2,200 at the bottom of the lineup. We'll see what he's got. Cheap guy to throw in there if you're stacking up a bunch of Blue Jays. But Will Wagner, Ernie Clement, and Roden at the bottom of the lineup, more just movable parts for cheap prices. 1 through 6, kind of interesting. Alejandro Kirk is not the best catcher bat in the world, but he's competent enough, so if you need to put him in there for a cheap price, you can. But it's really 1 through 4 plus 6, and even Springer is a little bit able to be lopped off. These 4 guys are the most interesting. All right, DK, you're on the board. Welcome, welcome. Max Video says, EMAC is everywhere. He's lurking. When you get all dolled up to go out and about, do you become GMAC? Phillies and the Nats. I think we got the Nats. Oh, that's funky. They broke up the trio up at the top. I'm surprised. Oh. This is our first Luis Garcia. First Luis Garcia hiccup of the day. I gotta see if that's fixed on the back end. Hopefully this year it'll actually work. So yeah, it was through most of the spring they were going Abrams, Wood, and Dylan Cruz up at the top of the lineup, but they've made a little bit of a change for today. Luis Garcia moving into the 3rd spot. He's coming off of a great season last year, a little bit of a breakout, 18 home runs, 22 stolen bases last year, created runs 11% better than average. This is a reasonably talented Nationals lineup. I don't think they're going to be bottom feeders this year. I really don't. If they get anything out of Cruz and James Wood, and they need more than anything, they need those kids to be what they're supposed to be. But if they take their first steps or their second steps and show some growth, this could be a good lineup. They brought in Nathaniel Lowe and Josh Bell. Fills out with some veteran talent for fair prices as far as DFS goes, and those are quality bats. They're not the best bats in baseball, obviously. You didn't bring in Aaron Judge. But as far as what the Nats could do, those are 2 good bats to go get. Nathaniel Lowe is great at getting to first base. He's got a little bit of pop from the left side. But he's going to be a decent bat in the heart of that lineup, helping these kids to create runs. So this is an interesting Nats lineup. Their biggest problem today is they're going up against Zach Wheeler. Wheeler's one of the best pitchers in all of baseball. 2.57 ERA with a 3.30 xFIP last year, 28.5% strikeout rate over 200 innings, 32 starts, a 0.96 whip. He does not allow too many opportunities, keeps the ball in the yard, 8.3% barrels of 13-degree average launch, just 33.2% hard hits. He misses bats. He doesn't allow exit velo, or he misses the fat part of the bat. He doesn't allow exit velo. Stuff Plus loves him. You fire away with Zach Wheeler, even with the Nats improving somewhat. What I will point out, though, with the talent in this lineup, they do have some low strikeout guys. It averages out to a 21-2, which is around league average. But you got two guys at the very bottom of the lineup that were below 20% as young players last year. Keibert Ruiz has never been a high strikeout guy, 11% last year, 10.3% the year before. He puts tons of bat on ball because he also doesn't walk. He just doesn't square the ball up all that much. You can see it in the barrel rate, the hard hit rate the last two seasons, the home run total, 13 in 485. For somebody who puts the bat on the ball that frequently, Keibert Ruiz should be better than what we get. But he is low strikeout, so maybe that impacts Wheeler's ceiling number a little bit. But between the two sides of that equation, you go Zach Wheeler more often than not. Paul DeJong, no real love for DeJong in the heart of this lineup, but he did hit 24 home runs last year in under 500 plate appearances. Had a 200 ISO. That's what Paul DeJong's always been. High strikeout, decent power bat with no real skills as far as the hit tool, as far as getting on base. But a playable DFS shortstop. He's got third base eligibility this season, or to start out anyway today, at 25 on FanDuel. He's just third base eligible at 29 on DK. So a reasonable enough upside power bat. But again, not against Zach Wheeler. It's just not the pitcher that you're targeting for that kind of a player. If you're building a stack of Nats, obviously, he can be in it. Don't take me wrong when I say things like, you don't want to be targeting Zach Wheeler with that kind of a player. That's kind of a blanket statement for all of the Nats. But then once you've passed that threshold already, all right, now you're in it. Now you might as well grab some of these guys if you're going to be doing it. Let's talk about Paul DeJong. For me, it's probably Abrams Wood off the top. I would want Cruz in it, but I hate that he's at the bottom of the lineup. You can at least consider him a kind of a wraparound piece, but the 288 on base in his 132 plate appearances last year is not exactly encouraging for that. So it's probably, your straight line 5-man off the top on DK is easy to reach. On FanDuel, it's one of the two first basemen in the top three here. Let me yell at my dog for a minute. Joker! What are you doing? What's all that noise? You going in the garbage? I think he was in the garbage. Trader, it's opening day, man. Get on the ball. So I think we're mostly dealing top 5 if we're going to the Nats. And really between these two, you're picking your poison. They're essentially the same price, same positioning. But mostly it's the Wheeler of it. On the other side, Mackenzie Gore, 6,600 on DraftKings. There's that price we were missing on the board over there. 7,400 on FanDuel. Playable, a talented kid, but there are definitely some warts there. Last season, walked 8.9%, had a 1.42 whip. You just can't do that against a team like the Phillies. That's going to burn you. They get on base way too much already, and you're just giving up opportunities there. A lot of the other parts of his line, 12.5% swinging strike rate is very good. Stuff Plus loves the arsenal. Only allowed 2.05% home runs on a very strong barrel rate allowed. Struck out nearly 25%. So there's good to go with the flaws with Mackenzie Gore as well. Just doesn't feel like the day. Doesn't feel like the spot for him. He's a playable SP2 value pitcher on DraftKings, but just barely. That's his talent overcoming the skepticism, overcoming the matchup slightly. But if you're taking a lean in that matchup, it's definitely Phillies bats. We still don't have this lineup. A little bit of a question about whether it'll be Trey Turner or Kyle Schwarber in the leadoff role. We saw both through the spring. That used to belong to Schwarber. 3 true outcomes hitter, 366 on base percentage last year. Also hit 38 home runs. Draws a ton of walks. Strikes out at a pretty fair clip, but 28.5% is not 30 plus, as you'll note. And he makes absurd contact with the ball. Don't overthink Kyle Schwarber. 11.55. He was number 2 or number 3 in the home run model overall for the entire day. 52, 39. Little bit better if he's hitting leadoff. You get, a fraction of a bonus potential plate appearance. But in the 4 spot, hitting behind 3 guys that are very good at getting on base, could be a big day for Kyle Schwarber if he can go deep. Trey Turner got on at a 338 clip last year. Bryce Harper at 373. Alec Boehm at 332. Every one of those guys has medium power Alec Boehm through Trey Turner with decent power to Bryce Harper with monster power. That is a great quartet of hitters. All 3 guys have very solid hit tools, 280 or above last season. Everybody created runs. The average WRC plus for those 3 guys was 28% better than average last year. For the top 5 in this projected version of the lineup, it's 126. That's including JT Realmuto, the catcher in there. 4,100, not a bad price for Realmuto when you have to play catchers. Let's not forget how talented he still is. I know the overall totals may be a little bit down, but still created runs 9% better than average. Hit 14 home runs in 413 plate appearances. Had a 10.4% barrel, 45.9% hard hit. Realmuto's still excellent, particularly for DFS. Doesn't run quite as much. Only stole 2 bags last year. But tons of talent there. Max Kepler, we'll see if we get him against a lefty. I would expect him. They're going to have him in there regularly, but you do have him. You've got Brandon Marsh, who I took out of the lineup in place of Johan Rojas, which is how they typically handle that. We'll see what happens with the confirmed version of the lineup, but we know this Phillies team pretty well. Oh, it just dropped, actually. It is Trey Turner in the leadoff spot. Oh, and look at that. Brandon Marsh is in the lineup. I should have stuck with what I had originally. There you go. All right, so no concerns lefty-lefty for the Phils, obviously. They've got more lefties in the lineup than they do righties against Mackenzie Gore. Kind of surprising. So the only change there was Marsh back into the lineup. So Max Kepler coming in. A lot of power in that bat. Only ended up with 8 home runs last year in 399 plate appearances. Year before, hit 24 in 491. Had a 224 ISO. That's the real Max Kepler. Let's see. Max for his career. Pretty impactful splits. 209 ISO for the career against righties. A 111 WRC plus. 142 ISO against lefties. 78 WRC plus. 221, 292, 363 versus 243, 326, 452. So pretty diminished lefty-lefty. Hitting in the heart of the lineup is not exactly ideal. Maybe a little bit of a ding to just the general quality of the Phillies lineup, but Max Kepler on his own, an interesting bat still, even against the lefty. And we got to keep in mind, you're probably getting 5 innings out of most of these starters. And then you get into the bullpen, so there could be upside there for Max. 4,000, 2,600 for his power. Not a bad price. Nick Castellanos, 45, 3,000. 23 homers last year, was a mix and match guy. If anything happens in the news, play Nick Castellanos because he's going to hit a home run. Otherwise, you get to him when you get to him. He's part of stacks, but he's not a priority. Bryson Stott, a lot of speed, stole 32 bases last year. Otherwise, pretty mediocre. 88 WRC plus was the worst on the out of the starting regulars. Brandon Marsh is an interesting guy, though. Barrels a lot of balls, hits the ball very hard, does strike out a decent amount, but draws his walks. That's an interesting bat down the bottom of the lineup. I don't love him against the lefty, and I don't love him out of the 9 spot in general, but does get on base enough to support the idea of him being a wraparound play. Did steal 19 bags last year with 16 home runs. So an interesting enough DFS play for 35-27 across sides. I just don't love him lefty-lefty here. See what you guys are talking about. Max Video says, I actually like the Nats pitcher today, and I'm from Philly. He points out, yeah, they had Josh Bell last year. It's opening day. Gotta fire the new neurons, reconnect some of those pathways, you know? Appreciate the notes, guys. As always, this is a conversation, right? This is, you guys give me feedback. I give you thoughts. Ask questions. I'll ask you guys questions. This is a conversation. This is not me saying I know more and I'm better and blah, blah, blah. You get that on other places too much. Around here, we just talk this stuff through. Good to see you got to get this win. What's going on, buddy? MLB grind with Gundacker. I'm going to go ahead and assume that is our pal Gundacker popping in. Good to see you, buddy. We got to catch up at some point. I know you, I saw on Twitter that you kicked off a new operation as far as MLB. People were asking about it. I meant to reach out to you during the offseason and, talk about connecting on some stuff, but let's see if we can chat at some point. But congrats on the new site, pal. Oh, dude, don't worry about it. Gun says, I don't know how to change this username to not be so self-promotional. Check out MLB Grind with Gundacker. I believe he's doing shows. He's got his own website up. You guys know how good he is at this stuff. So, dude, don't worry. You can promote here all you want. Andy's here. Demon Nat's here. Power. Yep. Power says I haven't heard it in a minute. CM311. I don't recall any weather issues today. Pretty sure we're clean. Anything flagged? Let's see. What do we got? Those are domes. Looks like KC maybe has a little bit. I did forget to check Mr. Roth before the show started. Again, gotta reconnect those pathways. My default for those questions is always just to go to Roth. It looks like St. Louis actually is tricky. So those Midwest games, Kansas City and St. Louis, with St. Louis being the worst one. His read on that is essentially rain pregame, clearing out, could trigger a late start. Yeah, so his read there is worst case is late start and play. And then there's a little bit of rain and breeze in Kansas City, and otherwise totally fine. We do want to keep in mind, the impact of temperatures on baseball. A lot of 50, 60-degree temperatures out there. So it's always something that's, why we've got lower run totals today than we will in the dog days of summer. That's why we get lower totals for home runs for projections. It's all part of the equation. Let's keep on rolling, though. We got a lot more games to get through, and it is 12:54. 3:05 start on FanDuel, 4 o'clock start on DraftKings. 11 games and 9 games. Hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you've not done that. Check out rotoscouts.com. Access to everything. MLB, NBA, NHL, NFL when it comes back. Under $1 a day, all in. Red Sox, Rangers. Let's see if we got these lineups. I think we have at least the Red Sox because I saw that Casas is in. All right, we got them both. So I mentioned this Sox lineup kind of grading out pretty well as far as just the aggregate projections go. And I don't think they're going to be super popular. I think Evaldi is easily talented enough to put up a strong day against this team. But there are a lot of good bats. And now that we have the confirmation, let me actually see it before I say it. Now that we have the confirmation that Tristan Casas is in the lineup, I'm kind of liking this Red Sox lineup. I think they're very interesting. You get a lot of power, reasonably talented hit tools, a lot of on-base skills, a lot of run creators. We go with positive WRC plus marks. The only guy who wasn't above average last season for run creation was Ceddanne Rafaela, and he hit 15 home runs and stole 19 bases. So just counting stats-wise, he was fine for DFS. Multiple 200-plus ISO guys, multiple 25 home run guys. You bring in Alex Bregman, He's going to fill third base, sliding Rafi Devers over to DH. Devers doesn't have to worry about defending anymore. I love the upside for Devers to get easily back over 30 home runs. 35 is probably in the picture. Slow start last year, but ended up with 28 home runs, a 244 ISO, 134 WRC plus, and looked every bit the Rafi Devers that he always has. Full price at $3,800 on the FanDuel slate, though you could easily have made him $4,000 and I wouldn't have blinked. Just $49 on DraftKings stands out a little bit. Kind of noteworthy. Talking about Eovaldi, though, as mentioned, he's a respectable pitcher. He's a talented enough veteran. But last year, a 3.80 ERA, 3.47 xFIP underneath that is definitely better. 24% strikeout rate, not bad, but not elite. He's very good in terms of the strikeout to walk. 24% against a 6% walk rate is strong. 13% swinging strike rate. He can miss bats. He can induce swinging strikes. Not the best at finishing hitters off. For a guy with a low walk rate, that CSW with that swinging strike rate is a little bit off the mark. Not a lot of called strikes in the mix. Give up a fair amount of home runs, but not a terrible amount. 3.30% home run rate is fine. It's not, 4 is usually the mark that I use for, that's problematic. So 3.30 is high, but it's also okay. That came on just an 8.8 degree average launch, decent enough barrel rate, 42.6% hard hits, and 89.3 miles an hour of exit velo on average. So you can get to him for power, but it's not really crashing through the home run model. Rafi Devers at 8.79. Casas, who again, I love that bat, 7.55 in the home run model. Big upside there. But Eovaldi's ability to limit premium contact does have a little impact. That's why I said yesterday when we were talking about it that I don't necessarily love that they're topping out just the aggregate fantasy point totals. But they're talented enough, and honestly, they're deserving. I'm not going to put my thumb on the scale to change things. When a team that is as talented player for player wise as this just tops out the day, just is what it is. And if people aren't going to be going here, I think I am. Jarren Duran off the top, 21 homers, 34 steals last year, a 207 ISO, 129 WRC plus. 5,400 on DraftKings is very expensive. He's the most expensive Red Sox hitter by 500, which is deserved maybe, but maybe not to that degree. Could probably have pulled 200 off of here and given it to Rafi Devers. 37, 38 for those two on FanDuel, though. They're pricey up at the top, but then you get cheap enough. If you just take the first 4 off the top, you're only at 34 a piece. That's high but playable on FanDuel. If you get down into this mix, you're immediately dipping as far as that price goes, especially if you're using their hotshot rookie Christian Campbell. Take that min price, drop it in there next to Bregman, Duran, and Devers, and now you're at 3,200 a piece. And you're getting Bregman, Duran, and Devers. If you go Casas, skip Bregman, go that route. Slightly cheaper, 31 and change, 32 for rounding up. So the Red Sox are affordable. On DraftKings, it's pretty similar as far as those prices go. Love the 39 on Casas. 13.3% barrels, 45.2% hard hits last year, 13-1, 2 the year before that. He does strike out a fair amount, but he gets his walks. He gets to first base, 337 on base last year in his 243 plate appearances. The only problem this kid has is staying on the field. But when he's out there, and again, he did just take a weird hop off the hand the other day, but he's in the lineup today, absolutely going to go there. 222 ISO last year in that sample. Year before, had 24 home runs in 502 plate appearances in his first full season. 226 ISO, creator runs 29% better than average. I think they're ceiling well beyond those numbers. Trevor Story, another super injury-prone player, but 4,400, 2,900. Anytime he's in the lineup at those prices, you can definitely go there, particularly that price. Actually, the 44.29 is about the same. In 106 plate appearances last year, he was all right. 2 homers, 6 steals. Creator runs 1% better than average, but that is a nothing sample. Obviously, it's meaningless. We haven't seen a lot of Trevor Story over the last couple of seasons. While he's in there, you can play him. Again, Campbell broke camp with the team, earned the job. Going to be interesting at second base. 3,100 at second base on the DraftKings slate and the dead min at shortstop on FanDuel. I would go to that dead min, save $900 over Trevor Story, especially since they're hitting 5.6. Willie Abreu, another quality bat, 3,300, 2,700. 15 home runs last year, a 206 ISO, was stinging the ball. A lot of extra base hits in there. 10.8% barrels and 49.8% hard hits. Not bad. There's a lot of talent in that lefty bat for a pretty cheap price. I don't think we're talking about a monster home run hitter, but as far as a 15 homer guy with a lot of doubles in there, a lot of well-struck balls, and a lot of run-creating events, really like that option. Connor Wong, mix and match catcher, had a decent season last year, 283, 33, 425, hit some home runs. Cedric Rafaela, mix and match player again, 15 homers and 19 steals, counting stats at worst. On the Texas side, I mentioned, reasonable strikeout rate. And the reason I brought that up was somebody 2 days ago in Discord mentioned that they had a high strikeout rate, so they loved Crochet even more. And I was like, it's not exactly right. You got Semien cutting it down significantly at his 14.6 each of the last 2 seasons, 18% out of Corey Seager last year, just 20% out of Wyatt Langford. Then you get to a couple of higher numbers. Adolis, Jake Berger, and Josh Young are always going to be fairly problematic as far as strikeouts go, and not one of those guys really draws that many walks. So it's not great for modern baseball having 3 guys in the heart of the order under a 300 on base or thereabouts. Those were the 3 I meant to highlight. Kevin Pillar's in the lineup for the Rangers today. Dead min price on DraftKings, 2,600 on FanDuel. That's a playable, just click him in as a spot filler for the min price and go about your day. But he's not appealing. That's not a priority by any means. 8 homers, 12 steals last year, 88 WRC plus. He was okay. Kyle Higashioka is kind of interesting, hiding down the bottom of the lineup for the Rangers, though. 17 homers and a little bit of a breakout over 263 plate appearances last year. Hits the ball very hard and always has. Barrels the ball pretty significantly, 10.9% last year, 11.1% the year before. Getting more of a full-time opportunity, potentially. I don't mind Higgy as a sneaky catcher if you're stacking up Rangers, but he's not a reason to go to the Rangers. The reasons to go to them exist pretty much up at the top of the lineup. Corey Seager is still a superstar, 5,200, 3,600 across sites. 30 home runs last year, a 234 ISO, 140 WRC plus. We should see a better year out of Marcus Semien. Took a little bit of a dip in terms of the on base. They hit to 23 home runs, is a little bit down. The 154 ISO a little bit down, and 1% below average creating runs. That's why the price is so low at 44 on DraftKings. FanDuel's got him full price, 3,600. I guess FanDuel's believers still like I am. Wyatt Langford, another guy coming in really cheap out of the gate. 43 on DraftKings. Love that price for him. 3,300 on FanDuel is probably about right to start, but I expect it'll go up, especially with a hot start. 16 homers, 19 steals last year in 557. Underperformed expectations as one of the top overall prospects, but still did come away with a 110 WRC plus, started to catch on as things went along. And again, hitting third today, coming in very cheap behind these 2 bats. That's a priority bat if you're looking at the Rangers. Adolis and Jake Berger, ridiculous amounts of righty power. Adolis has averaged 30.5 home runs for the last 4 years, but last year was his worst year in that stretch with 25 homers. That was coming off of his best year in that stretch with 39 the year before. Truth's probably somewhere in between, right around that 30 home run average. Hopefully he gets back up to that spot because I was unable to trade him in the offseason in the Dynasty League, and I really need him to. Berger had a nice year last year, 29 home runs, 209 ISO, strikeout prone, doesn't draw a lot of walks, but he's all right. He's an okay playable bat. If you're going to this team, all 5 of those guys on DK, actually down to 6 with Young, and you could throw Kyle Higashioka into the mix as well to get cheap. So a lot of playability on DraftKings, maybe a little less playable because you don't really need to go to the Higgy spot on the FanDuel slate. You're just talking about like the top, 4 out of the top 6 if you're going there. But the problem, of course, maybe buried the lead, is that they're going up against Garrett Crochet. Was one of the best pitchers in baseball last year. 35.1% strikeout rate, a 3.58 ERA with a 2.38 xFIP, 16.2% swinging strike rate. Elite numbers. Absolutely, utterly elite. My only concern about Crochet is in the extended sense. For today, absolutely go there. He's one of the top 2 projected pitchers on either side. Top 3? Top 3. So you can absolutely fire away with Crochet shares. I don't know how much I'm going to have. 9,096. I'm probably going to go a little bit more expensive in some lineups and then less expensive in some lineups. Not sure how much I land on Crochet. But I think, capable of absolutely dominating this slate for however long he's out there. We could see them protect the arm a little bit early in the season. Again, that is my lingering concern. He tripled his career high in innings. His career high as a reliever had been 50-something, and he threw 146 last year. That's on a rebuilt, already had Tommy John arm. Lingering concerns going forward today could be awesome. CM311, good to see you. G Money the Don, what's going on? Javier Hernandez in the house. Good to see you too, pal. Welcome, everybody. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, check out rotoscouts.com. Access to everything is under $1 a day, and I mean everything. Baseball projections, baseball home run picks, stack rankings, value ranking. I forget what the hell else is up there. NBA projections, which I'll get to later this afternoon. NHL projections, line combinations, power play units for every NHL team, for every main slate. All of that is included on a weekly, monthly, or quarterly plan for under $1 a day, only at rotoscouts.com. You hear me starting to make fun of my own promos as I'm doing that with my inflection? Let's move on. Logan Webb, Hunter Green. The only thing that I don't like about this pitching matchup is the ballpark. Logan Webb is excellent. 2.5 degree average launch angle last year, just a 1.31% home run rate allowed. Stuff Plus loves the arsenal at 111. A 3.47 ERA with a 3.28 xFIP underneath it. Doesn't strike out many, but typically works pretty deep into games. 204 2/3 in 33 starts last year. One of the higher innings pitch totals in all of baseball. But you can see that comes with just a 20.5% strikeout rate. The strikeout to walk ratio is not bad, but the strikeout total requires the innings for him to really rack up a DFS relevant total to compete with like the top guys. What you get out of Logan Webb typically is just clean innings, excellence. So maybe a little bit lower of a absolute ceiling, but also just one of the very solid mid-board type guys on this slate. For 86 on FanDuel, he's playable. At 75 on DraftKings, he's an appealing SP2 option, even in this ballpark. I think the innings will be there enough to support where he's projected. And I like his ability to limit the power for this team and keep the ball on the ground. And if this team's not elevating for home runs, they can definitely create with their speed. But he's pretty good at limiting opportunities. And if you're just getting ground ball after ground ball, that's going to limit, even with a speedy team, your ability to rack up a decent run total. So as long as he can keep the long ball off the board and is, per the model, nobody even halfway to it, not even Ellie, don't mind that. So I think at the DK price, he's kind of interesting. Hunter Green, I think I would shy more away from, despite being a much better strikeout pitcher, 27.7% last year. A 2.75 ERA, but this is the real number, the 4.19 xFIP underneath that. A little bit problematic. Walks too many and was having walk issues during the spring. Does have great swing and miss stuff, though. 13% swinging strike rate last year. Just a 1.02 whip, despite a 9+% walk rate. That's downright impressive. Just a 1.96% home run rate, 5.2% barrels. He's a fly ball pitcher, but he's difficult to square up because of that elite stuff. 123.6 is an absurd mark for Stuff Plus. Remember, 100 is the average. This might be the highest Stuff Plus mark on the entire slate. Kind of curious about that, but there's no quick way to check that. But ballpark, don't love the matchup going up against this Giants team. I have a healthy enough respect for this, at least the collection of individuals that we've got on the Giants, and the ballpark factor and the command and control issues. So there's a lot working against Green, but that price on DraftKings is very strong. So he is a playable SP2 over here with an appreciable ceiling. At a similar price to a lot of the top guys on the FanDuel slate, I don't love it. Bats, either side, definitely playable. They both rate out in the middle, but this is one of the higher totals on the board, one of the better hitting environments on the board. The time of year is going to have a little bit of an impact on that. But it looks like a playable spot. Lamont Wade, excellent off the top. 380 on base last year. Created runs 19% better than average. The power was out a little bit last year. 401 plate appearances. We only landed at 8 home runs, just a 121 ISO. It's a better power bat than that in the long term. Very cheap at $3,800 first base on DraftKings. 27 first base and outfield eligible on the FanDuel slate. Not bad. It's got Willy Adames hitting behind him this year. They brought him in off of a career year last year. 32 homers, 21 steals, 211 ISO, 119 WRC+. Willie was fantastic last season. 25% strikeouts, 10.8% walks. You're getting decent production there. Very solid striker of the baseball with a 12% barrel rate last season. Probably going to come down across the board, playing half his games in San Francisco this year. But a very playable shortstop for DFS, and he is not that expensive on DraftKings. 43, that's a great price. He's 3,600 on FanDuel. He's priced like a star on FanDuel. This is a discount on DraftKings. In fact, the entire Giants lineup is pretty damn cheap on DraftKings. Jung-Hoo Lee, we only saw for 158 plate appearances last season. Didn't get much of a read on him, but seems like a solid hard hit line drives type of hitter. We've seen this mold before. We'll see if that's what he turns into. But only 158 plate appearances, 262, 310, 331. But the 41% hard hit rate is at least decent. The reason I'm saying that about his profile, not a lot of barrels mixed in the small sample. Low strikeout, low walk, so a lot of bat on ball. I suspect we're dealing with that kind of a hitter, but compelling anyway at 3,500, 2,600. Matt Chapman. Talked about it yesterday. I know that went away. That was deliberate. I mentioned this a couple times yesterday, and I wanted to pop it on the board here. So what we're looking at here is my favorite little island of hitters. And it's these guys right in here. I'm looking at the wrong arrow. It's those guys right in there. What we're looking at here is fast swing rate and average bat speed. Right? So the frequency with which you swing fast and the degree to which the actual velocity of the bat. This guy lurking up in the... Let me just do it this way. This guy right here, Giancarlo Stanton. All off on his own. Way the hell over here. Swings the bat. And I've been talking about this for years, and this is a great illustration. Dude swings the bat like nobody else, at least currently. Then it's O'Neal Cruz, Kyle Schwarber, Aaron Judge. And then my little island here. Dude in the middle is Shohei Ohtani. Julio Rodriguez is there. Jordan Alvarez is there. Gunnar Henderson is there, which maybe people wouldn't have suspected. And then you get really interesting. And the reason I landed on it as a topic right now is because one of those guys is Matt Chapman. Right? Elite level of swing speed. The other two are even more interesting because Chapman is not exactly a secret. Guys hit a lot of home runs over the last few years. The other guys are Christopher Morel and my favorite sneaky guy, Joe Adell. Not a lot of people calling out Joe Adell and Christopher Morel for having similar swings as far as the swing rate, the fast swing rate, and the actual speed at which they swing, which is really what it's all about. And that combined with the ability to actually strike the baseball, which is where the Adells and the Chris Morels fall off of the Shohei Ohtanis, the Julio Rodriguez's, the Jordan Alvarez's. But the fact that they can swing the bat as frequently and as fast, as frequently fast and as fast as Ohtani, as Alvarez, as those guys, is very, very interesting to me. Part of that is season-long, fantasy. Those guys were all on my sleepers list. But I think that's really interesting to keep in our pockets as far as between as I'm making a choice for cheap guys down toward the bottom of a lineup. Maybe I pick Chris Morel because of that instead of somebody else. Just a thought. Matt Chapman turned that last year into 12.6% barrels, 48.2% hard hits, 27 homers, swiped 15 bags unexpectedly. Just a really interesting bat. And again, Chapman is no surprise that it's kind of surprising that he's in that specific group, but it's no surprise that he's got a great swing. He's been a good power hitter over time. 3,900, 3,300, very cheap on DraftKings. Elio Ramos, 3,400, 3,100. Hit 22 home runs last year. 200 ISO. Kind of didn't come out of nowhere because he was a decently regarded prospect, but definitely surprised me, and I think surprised a lot of people out there. 14.5% barrels, 47.4% hard hits. Not bad. Patty Bailey, a 42% hard hit rate, delivered just 8 home runs and a 105 ISO off of it. But there's enough to believe in there as far as being able to strike the ball. Cut his strikeouts pretty significantly, 28% down to 22.3. Push walks up a little bit. So some improvements under the covers there. Wilmer Flores, mix and match guy, doesn't really strike out. Doesn't really have a ton of pop in that bat anymore, though. Mike Yastrzemski, mix and match quality outfielder, 18 home runs, a 206 ISO. Great video kicking around social media. I'm not even sure if it's from spring training or from last year or whatever, but saw it this morning. Just him with a World War II, 100-something-year-old World War II vet throwing out the first pitch and just having a little conversation with him. And he goes up, and the guy can barely see. And he says, "Oh, who's that?" And he says, "Oh, it's Mike Yastrzemski." He says, "Mike Yastrzemski, I used to follow you." And he said dad, but he meant granddad, Carl Yastrzemski. It's pretty cool. So they had a little chat. Cool little video. Tyler Fitzgerald, an interesting fantasy player. 341 plate appearances last year, hit 15 home runs, stole 17 bases, 217 ISO. EMAC picked him up off the waiver wire in the Dynasty League. 3,600, 2,900, fills 3 positions on FanDuel. Definitely a playable bat in this hitter's ballpark. Power calls out, you got to go Tyler O'Neill today. He's homered in 5 straight opening day games. It wouldn't have anything in my mind to do with the fact that he's done that, if that is correct. That does sound correct. I do remember that from at some point last year. Jesus Christ. I have 39 text messages? What the hell's been going on? Let me make sure nothing's actively on fire. Yeah, I think we're good. But just Tyler O'Neill is just a very good power hitter. So I would just, I would play that anyway, and I'm going to at least consider some stacks of Orioles. On the Red side, TJ Friedel off the top, mix and match player at best, 13 homers, 9 steals. He's all right. Matt McClain missed all of last year, but has a little bit of power, decent amount of speed. Year before last, in 403 plate appearances, if you've forgotten, 16 home runs, 14 steals, not bad. Got on at a 357 clip, not bad. 216 ISO, 128 WRC+. Those are star caliber numbers. Phil second base, shortstop on FanDuel, second base on DraftKings. It's not exactly a cheap price for a guy who really hasn't been in the show for a year, but there's talent there. Ellie is an all-world talent, 25 homers, 67 stolen bases last year, 212 ISO, 118 WRC+. You can always play Ellie. You can one-off him in this spot, even against Logan Webb. But I will say Logan Webb has the ability to cut Ellie down a little bit here because he's going to sap the power a little bit. Ellie was very good at getting on base last year, 339 on base, so we might get the steals, but you don't necessarily want to chase the idea of getting on against a very tough pitcher and then finding the stolen base upside. You could get a nice score out of Ellie today, but it doesn't feel like the best day to go to the Reds. Gavin Lux hitting cleanup is a mix and match quality bat that we've kind of been waiting for a number of years now. He's all right. He's not expensive. He's playable. 10 home runs just 10 home runs in 487 plate appearances, only a 132 ISO last year. We didn't get that breakout last season in a fair sample. Don't love it, but playable. Henry Candelario, always playable, power upside for sure. 20 home runs in 463 last year. Did have a 200-plus ISO. It's a guy you can chase if you're stacking Reds, but not a reason to go to the Reds. Spencer Steer in the lineup. He was potentially going on the injured list to start the season, but managed to recover enough in time to get into the opening day lineup. Austin Hayes came out of the original projected lineup that was on the site because he did go on the IL. Steer's a decent enough bat, 20 homers, 25 steals. Phil's counting stats for sure. 96 WRC plus is a little bit below the line. 178 ISO is a little bit below the line, but he's capable enough. Probably the 4th best option in this lineup. Ellie, McClain, Candelario, and then Steer, I would say. Then you get to Christian Encarnacion, who's having Christian Encarnacion Strand, who's having a pretty decent spring, coming off of a terrible 123 plate appearances in the show as one of the top prospects in baseball as a power hitter. Coming in at 2,500 on both sites at first base, he's at least interesting. If you're going to the Reds, he's interesting. The issue there, again, is going to be the matchup, though, against Logan Webb. I don't see the power upside. Just a 3.58 for him. Again, Elliott, 4.11. Not a lot of power upside against Logan Webb, and that takes away all the appeal of Christian Encarnacion Strand. A lot of strikeouts, no walks to speak of. Jake Fraley, Jose Trevino at the bottom of the lineup are mix and match types. Between the two, you go Fraley. He's the better hitter. Also has a little bit of stolen base upside. Trevino, just a fantastic defensive catcher. Top end pitcher of the day, Paul Skeens going up against the Miami Marlins. We do not overthink these things. This is Paul Skeens on just a 5-inning projection, and he's topping the board. Don't overthink it. If you can afford it, just play Paul Skeens. Careful, Bill H. EMAC is lurking somewhere in the chat. He might blast you for saying stuff like that. The king of the sales pitch, the mid-show sales pitch. EMAC always makes it like fun and conversational, and you're halfway through the pitch before you realize it's a pitch, though. He's very, very good at it. But yeah, I try, Bill. I try and keep it content focused and just drop every now and again, probably to my own detriment, in the mention of the website, which is rotoscouts.com. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe if you get a chance. Pirates. So, yeah, Paul Skeens. We just play him. 33.1% strikeouts in 23 starts as a rookie last year. Came into baseball established as one of the top 5 pitchers in all of baseball. And if I were being honest with you guys, I would have said a lower number than that. Being honest about everything else, I think he's probably the best pitcher in baseball already. Going up against one of the worst lineups in the sport, the only real threat there, as far as a guy who might get on base a few times and just wreak a little bit of havoc, is Xavier Edwards in the leadoff spot. 4,000, for him at shortstop. He's interesting. If you wanted to target Paul Skeens for reasons, you could definitely grab him. It's just that everything else about that stack completely dies on the vine if you do that. There are no bats in this lineup behind him. He got on base in 303 plate appearances at a 397 clip last year. He stole 31 bases, 328, 397, 423. Created runs on the Marlins, 28% better than average. That alone is impressive. But there's nothing to support him. Cal Stowers, a little bit of pop in that bat from the left side, not against Paul Skeens. And in 209 plate appearances, we're talking about a guy who hit 3 home runs, had a 125 ISO. That's despite a 10.9% barrel and a 51.3% hard hit. It's just a lot of well-struck atom balls. Jonah Bride, no thank you, not against Paul Skeens. 11 home runs in 272 plate appearances last year. Congratulations. Maybe if you're facing some lousy pitcher someday, we'll talk about you. Matt Mervis, 28 pretty bad plate appearances last season. Decent pedigree as a rookie with a little bit of pop. 2,200 on FanDuel at first base, second base, third base, eligible for 31 on DraftKings. Not against Paul Skeens. I just don't want it. And even from a contrarian, who can we play that's different, that nobody's got, you do want to play that game to some degree when we're stacking, but we want to do it from the middle. It's the same conversation as we have about NBA, right? We want to be grabbing our differentiators from the middle, not from the very bottom. Those guys are super low owned for a reason. Every now and again, a Marlins will get to a Paul Skeens. Sure, it's baseball. These things happen. But you want to chase possibility in baseball, but that's more on the individual sense. You do want to have a degree of probability in your stack choice. And then you can get into possibility once you start going individuals within that stack. Hopefully that makes some sense. Otto Lopez, Griff Conine, Derek Hill, Graham Pauley, Nick Fortes. These are not the 27 Yankees. As mentioned, I cut Sandy Alcantara. I basically really trimmed his projection to borderline playable. The reason I even leave it at borderline is because it's for the innings that I gave him, for the pitch count that we're dealing with, probably around 75. Against the Pirates, there's still enough there that Sandy could come away with a decent enough fantasy total for 77 on DraftKings. At 9,000 on FanDuel, I do think he's probably off the board now, though. I think we're looking at 75 pitches. I was more enthused yesterday when I was thinking of him in terms of like innings eater type dude who, multiple complete games in a season in a normal year, but coming off of a full missed season with some surgery, dicey. And they were managing the pitch count. He got up to 57 and then had one more outing without a pitch count on it. So 75 is probably about right. I don't think we're going there. Maybe as an SP2 on DK, but that would be it. Pirates bats against, that everything I just said about Sandy does not lead me to get to Pirates bats, because for the innings that he pitches, they're still going to be facing Sandy Alcantara, who is back on form, throwing 100 miles an hour and looks every bit as good as he ever did. So I don't really want any Pirates. If I'm taking anybody, it's O'Neal Cruz with his just monster power upside. 9.88 in the home run model, as mentioned. He's one of the guys in that really interesting area of that graph. Love the swing, love the power. It only came through for 21 homers last year, 22 stolen bases, just a 190 ISO. He's got work to do to deliver on the talent, but the talent is very, very real. 15.7% barrels, 54.9% hard hits. Elite numbers. Brian Reynolds is always playable. You can take the switch hitting outfielder and just plunk him into a stack if you want to. If you're taking more than one Pirate, I would advise to make Brian Reynolds your second click. 24 homers last year, 10 steals, a pretty decent triple slash. Created runs 18% better than average. You have Joey Bart there as a reasonably priced catcher at 36. I just don't love it in this matchup at that price. If he was cheaper, he'd be a little bit more compelling. He did hit 13 home runs in 282 plate appearances, seized the full-time job here in Pittsburgh at catcher, and good for him. He was around long enough as a prospect that I'm glad to see him kind of land somewhere. Andrew McCutchen, the old man, still getting it done. 20 homers last year. Dipped down to a 328 on base. Those skills have kind of begun to depart, but still has a little bit of pop, still squares the ball up, 11.7% barrels. I could see him surging for a little bit more power if we continue to transition more to just being hey, I'm not going to hit for average, I'm not going to get on base like I used to, but I can still drive the ball a little bit type of a hitter. 4,000, 2,800, just not against Sandy. Nick Gonzalez, Andy Rodriguez, Brian Hayes, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, very, very skippable down toward the bottom of this lineup. Endy is kind of interesting. Dead min price. If you're going there, it's playable, but you've already got a better catcher option up there, so that just becomes a conversation about price. And again, you're just not throwing bats at Sandy. But he's probably the most interesting name out of those four at the bottom. But this game's really all about Paul Skeens. 127. I got to hit the gas pedal a little bit here. I was planning on being done by 2 so that I would have the final hour there before lock. Let's see if we got the Guardians lineup in. Probably do. I'm sure we've got all the lineups by now. So as mentioned, in the run-up during yesterday's show, when I was talking just at the top about some of the pitchers, I went through and just in my head, I was, Guardians not going to be the best because, low strikeout team for Cole Ragans, maybe not the best matchup, blah, 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 blah. And once we landed on it, I was like, you know what? That's really not true anymore. That's just not who the Guardians are anymore. Outside, those two are still elite at avoiding strikeouts, as is Carlos Santana. But everybody else in this lineup now is, apologies to Brian Rocchio, who's just terrible offensively at the bottom of the lineup. Everybody else 25% or above with 3 guys who were 30% strikeout guys last year. This is a wildly different Guardians lineup now. So you can target them for some K upside. 23% average strikeout rate. That includes those two. Let's take those guys out, but we'll leave the 16 and the 20 in there and just talk about 3 through 9 in the lineup. That's a 26.5% average strikeout rate. Take the 16 from Carlos Santana out of it. It's 28-1. There are a lot of Ks in the Guardians lineup this year. Cole Ragans at 86 on DraftKings. Dynamite. Let's see if we can get a popularity number on him. I'll keep talking while this page reloads. I think Ragans could be maybe underappreciated because of that. Just reputationally, we think of the Guardians a little bit differently. Ragans had a 29.3% strikeout rate last year. Stuff Plus loves the arsenal. He's very good at limiting home runs despite being a little bit of a fly ball trajectory pitcher. Misses premium contact. 3.46 xFIP underneath his 3.14 ERA. Doesn't betray it too much. A little bit of an issue with walks, but he's excellent at inducing swinging strikes. Could have a real big impact on this game. Projects out nicely for 8,600. 98 on FanDuel. I think he's highly playable, but that does put him more in top end territory on the FanDuel slate. But definitely interesting right there. Yeah, all right, 86. I was looking at the wrong side. I was like, why is that price difference? But I was looking at the FanDuel number by accident. And then we had the pitching change on the Guardian side that we talked about at the very beginning of the show. Ben Lively taking over for Tanner Bybee, who scratched with sickness. I would not play Ben Lively here. Bump to Royals bats. That pushes Bobby Witt over the home run threshold. That pushes Sal over the home run threshold. That pushes Vinny Pasquantino up toward it. It pushes Hunter Renfroe up toward it. This is now one of the better power options on the entire day, actually. They went from the full lineup home run number previously against Bybee was 4.88 in the home run model and 5.93 for the top 6 hitters, which is how I do it on the tool there. And now our top 7 here is at a 8.84 and the top 6 is at 9.0. So that pitching change made a big impact. You can see Lively doesn't really strike anybody out, 18.7% strikeout rate, 3.81 ERA, but a 4.57 xFIP is the real number. 90-plus miles an hour of exit velo, target, 41.1% hard hit rate, target. Not a ton of barrels. Reasonable launch angle, but a 3.64% home run rate. The Royals got a lot more interesting with that pitching change. Not going to be a secret, but it's there. If you're going to Guardians bats against Cole Ragans, not really a premium spot. That would be another team that I would kind of list as maybe we shy away from that one a little bit. Jose Ramirez is always going to be playable against anybody. 39 home runs, 41 stolen bases. He's one of the very best players in baseball. He's going to compete for an MVP again. 258 ISO, 141 WRC plus. Him plus Steven Kwan, who's a light hitting but very good average hitting player, 368 on base, excellent hit tool, excellent at reaching first base, very good table setter, and he actually did come away with 14 home runs in a little weird outburst of power last year. Wouldn't necessarily expect a repeat of that, but as a 1-2 combination off the top, he plays very well for correlated scoring. Lane Thomas is an interesting category filler. 15 home runs, 32 steals last year, and 99 WRC plus. Full season in Cleveland should do wonders for the run creation numbers. I like Lane Thomas here. 35 on DraftKings is a very nice price. It's just not a good matchup against Ragans. Ragans doesn't allow a lot of power, a lot of Ks. Carlos Santana, 3,400, 2,700. Very cheap for a guy who had 23 home runs. Still can drive the ball a little bit. Created runs 14% better than average. Doesn't strike out. Does draw walks. He could be a little bit of a troublemaker in this lineup for Ragans. So it's really all about what the top 4 hitters do if Cleveland's going to do anything at all. Because Ragans is going to have a pretty good day as long as he misses power against Manzardo, against Jhonkensy Noel, against Bo Naylor, Gabriel Arias, and then Brian Rocchio doesn't have any power. But as long as you threading that home run needle through these hitters, there should be a lot of strikeouts there, and there's not a lot of upside through the back end outside of that ability to hit home runs. Tricky spot for Cleveland. Kansas City side, again, taking that power up through the roof. I talked about this acquisition yesterday, and I want to bring it up again because this is going to change the quality of this Kansas City lineup, in my opinion, significantly. We don't even have them on the screen anymore, but last year, they had Michael Garcia in the leadoff spot for like 75% of their games, despite him having a 281 on-base percentage. That is not playable in that role. They were going old school baseball, think he's fast. He did steal a bunch of bases despite not getting on that frequently, but it was just ineptitude as far as putting somebody at first base ahead of Bobby Witt, Vinny Pasquantino, Sal Perez, and so on. You cannot have that. So they went out and they got Jonathan India, who's a very good option for getting on base. 357 on base last year. Similar numbers in previous years, 330s. So that's going to fundamentally change the top of this batting order, even though it's only changing out one player. Jonathan India is really interesting up top. He also hit 15 home runs last year, stole 13 bases. Should be about those totals again. But he's most interesting for just run creation and creation of opportunities. Ahead of Bobby Witt, superstar. 32 home runs, 31 steals last year, 256 ISO, 168 WRC plus. Went 1, 2, or 3 in every single fantasy draft across the entire country in every format this season. Vinny Pasquantino coming off a great year. 19 home runs, 262, 315, 446, 108 WRC plus. There is more upside here. I cannot be convinced otherwise. Strikes out at just a 12.8% clip and makes great contact. Just needs to find more elevation, find more barrels. There's more power upside to come. There's a 300 season to come from Vinny Pasquantino. Love that bat. And with India getting on ahead of him, he drove in 97 runs despite a lot of cleanup from both of those guys. That's just on the quality of contact that he makes and the frequency of contact that he makes. If he starts driving the ball just a little teeny tiny bit more, we're going to be talking about a star. Sal Perez has been here for years, 27 home runs last year. Not much has changed about Sal. We're getting toward the back end of the career, but moving to first base for the most part should help him out a little bit. Or not for the most part, but getting opportunities at first base, I should say. Should help him out, rest up a little bit. Mike Massey, 2,700 on FanDuel, 3,800 on the DraftKings slate, 14 homers last year, 190 ISO. Decent lefty stick. That's in 356 plate appearances. Could be a 20 home run guy in a more complete season, but not great. Just low strikeout, 15.7% strikeout rate. This team is elite at avoiding the strikeouts, by the way. Look at all those low strikeout numbers. Hunter Renfroe, 15 homers last year in kind of a down season, but a guy who has hit many home runs over the last 5 years. It's just the last 2, the power's been out a little bit. So this is probably the version of Hunter Renfroe that we're dealing with now. 20 home runs 2 years ago, 15 last year. I think that's about what we should expect. He's an okay playable righty bat. MJ Melendez, a lot of quality of contact. Double-digit barrels and 49.6% hard hits 2 years ago. 45% hard hits, but lost a little bit of barrel last year. Still came away with 17 home runs, a 194 ISO, despite sucking at everything else. MJ is very playable for just any given slate home run power upside. And again, going up against this pitcher, he's not going to be highly owned. You can see the home run number there for yourself. That's not a bad option if you're stacking up Royals. I would include some MJ Melendez shares. Kevin Biggio, Kyle Isbell, entirely skippable at the bottom, though. New York Metropolitans going up against the Houston Astros. Jake Swales is here. Happy opening day, buddy. Tall to God, good to be back. Yeah, man. Good to see you guys. Check out rotoscouts.com. Not to plug too much, but everything is under $1 a day. Baseball, basketball, hockey, all going on right now. Every single main slate. Projections for all of it. Usual tools for baseball. Access to all of it under $1 a day, all in. No per sport nonsense. No surprise upticks in price. Clay Holmes on the bump for the Mets, turned into a starter this season. Love the upside season long. Love the upside in, we're going to be talking about him for DFS for sure. I hate that his first matchup of the year is against this Astros team, because this Astros team is elite at avoiding the strikeout. Even with this reconfigured version of the lineup, you can see how many sub 20% strikeout rates are there, and it's among their very best hitters. So I think we're going to get a lot of Ks out of Clay Holmes this year. I think we're going to get a lot of ground balls and a lot of ability to keep the ball in the yard, which is having an impact on the home run totals here. But it's just not a great matchup as far as fantasy scoring potential because of their ability to limit those strikeouts. So he's one of the lower projected guys. He's also one of the lower cost guys, though. So as an SP2 on DraftKings at 6,000, even against the Astros, I think he's super playable. I think the talent could overcome for 5 innings for 6,000 against even this team. I think you're fine there. 8,000 on FanDuel, one bite at the apple pitcher-wise, it probably wouldn't do it. I mentioned it yesterday. I did acquire him in our free agent bidding in the Dynasty League, but he's on the bench for this start. I'm not starting him for this one, so take that for what it's worth. In 63 relief innings last year, 25% strikeout rate, 3.14 ERA, 3.01 xFIP, and most notably just a 1.48% home run rate and a 0.3 degree average launch. Those numbers could swing a little bit, and that's what's having the impact on the home run totals. We're going to have to see. It's a little bit of a work in progress as far as what he looks like as a starter. The guy on the other side, super reliable, Framber Valdez, 8,300 on DraftKings. I don't know where that price is coming from. That is too cheap. The Mets are good. The Mets are going to be really good this year as far as the lineup goes, but that is too cheap for Framber. Framber is utterly elite at keeping the ball in the yard. 1.85% home run rate last year, 2.35 the year before, 1.33 the year before that. You can see negative 3.6 degree average launch angle in 2022. In 2021, it was negative 5 something. In 2023, it crept up to 4.2 degrees on the positive side of the scale, then went back down to 0.4 degrees. If you can't hit the ball in the air, you can't hit home runs. Full stop. Framber Valdez is excellent at that. He also is a very talented guy. 114 marked by Stuff Plus, 2.91 ERA with a 3.08 xFIP underneath it. Not much difference there. Can miss bats. 11.4% swinging strike rate is above average. 24% strikeouts was 25% 1-4 type strikeout guy. Absolutely playable here. This Mets lineup, even adding whoever this guy is, Trader, even adding him to the lineup, 23.1% strikeout rate. There are still Ks here. Part of that is inflated by Jose Siri's absurd 37.9%. Miguel Vientos at nearly 30% last year. Pete Alonso is a 25% guy. There are targets here. We don't know for sure that Luis Angel Acuna is going to be a 14% strikeout guy over more than 36 plate appearances. I suspect not. So Framber could find his Ks. He's also an innings eater, so he's one of the more likely guys to pitch more than 5. Let's put it that way. Come out in the 6th inning. I don't know that he completes it, but he's closer to that than some of the other guys. At 10-1, he's a little bit difficult of a fit on FanDuel. Just where he lands versus the other top-end pitchers of the day. Right here. Not far off the mark. We're talking about 4 projection points. That's nothing. That's a strikeout. It's an inning. But for the price difference, especially with a couple guys that I like in between, or at least one guy that I really like that we haven't talked about, and then just this absurd top-end talent, it's a stretch. But he's probably going to be a lot lower owned than some of the stars of the day. At worst, Framber's easily playable. The Mets, they are playable, but I would not prioritize them against this pitcher. Because of his ability to sap power, it is kind of a DFS detriment. It's a pitcher that I do tend to try and avoid. You can target him, though. Again, it's baseball. Anything can happen. And when we talked about that, you want to get your differentiation from the middle, not the bottom. That's where you're going to find the Mets today. Good as Framber is, he's only going to push them down so far because they've got Francisco Lindor, they've got Juan Soto, they've got Pete Alonso. They've got a lot of talent in this lineup now. Top 4 in the lineup last season averaged a 244 ISO. Top 4 in the lineup last season averaged 34 home runs. Averaged 43% better than league average creating runs. It's potentially an elite lineup. Lindor, the most underappreciated player in all of baseball. Mets fans don't like him. I don't understand why. He's on my dynasty team. 32 home runs, 29 steals, 223 ISO. Creator runs 36% better than average. The best hitter in all of baseball, Juan Soto, despite being a money-grubbing trader. 41 homers last year, 419 on base, 180 WRC+. plus. Nothing not to like about him except that he's not in pinstripes anymore. Pete Alonso couldn't find a job despite hitting 34 home runs. Came back to the Mets. Looked good. 4,900, 3,800. Differently priced across sites. A lot cheaper on DK than he is on FanDuel. That's kind of interesting. Mark Vientos for just 45. We're back to this game. Remember all last season we couldn't get Mark Vientos up to the right prices? Still a little bit cheap. 27 homers in 450 plate appearances last year. 251 ISO. What am I missing? Get some Mark Vientos in your life if you're rostering Mets. But again, that power is going to be difficult to find today against Framber. Brendan Nimmo. Previously, in years before last year, much better hitter than he was last year. Just 224, 328, 396, but still came away with 22 homers, 15 steals. Creator runs 9% better than average. I like him for a rebound. 4,000 on DraftKings, easily cheap enough to find out. 33 on FanDuel is about where he ought to be. Very playable if you're going to Mets, but again, maybe we're not going Mets all that aggressively today. Starling Marte still gets on base, still a decent amount of speed. Okay as a run creator. Jose Siri in the mix, 18 homers, 14 stolen bases. I should have grabbed the confirmed lineup. Just realizing that I've been talking through a projected. It is actually, I was about to mention the reason that occurred to me. I was about to mention it might be Tyrone Taylor, and it is. So instead of Jose Siri, we're getting Tyrone Taylor against the lefty. I mentioned that back and forth yesterday as well. Everybody else is the same. These two are in a different order, but Tyrone Taylor instead of Jose City. 22.8% strikeout rate out of him last year. 7 homers, 10 stolen bases. A toolsy player, but not a regular, not a full-time player, just a platoon type. But again, if you're going to Mets and you need a cheap outfielder in that equation, you can play him. But we're talking about the bottom dregs of desirable options. Luis Angel Acuna, Ron Acuna's brother. A lot of talent. Very strong genes. Hit 3 home runs. Top-end prospect for the Mets. Getting the gig out of camp. It'll be interesting to watch, but today's not the day. Luis Torrens is a backup. Is not a backup catcher. He's just a defensive catcher. That's the word I was struggling for. The Astros lineup. Let's see. We got that one as well. Looks pretty much as expected. Oh, except Brendan Rodgers in the lineup. Astros made some interesting changes. Kyle Tucker to the Cubs for one. Taking a superstar out of the lineup. It's not going to be great. Alex Bregman went to the Red Sox. But they went out. They acquired Christian Walker. Brought him right in to kind of fill one of those roles as far as the offense goes. And then they acquired Isaac Paredes to play third. Probably hit some home runs into the left field corner. That was the other one I wanted to throw up on the screen real quick. Talked about this yesterday. That's the easiest way to do this. Like that. So the reason that the Astros went and got Isaac Paredes is, hopefully on your screen right now, yes, is this. See all those home runs in the left field corner? Right? That was last year with Tampa. And then we scroll down. I think I passed it. There it is. Expected home runs by park. And we find the Houston Astros. And we see that 26 is higher than any other park in the league would have been. This is the perfect park for this highly specific hitter. You can see everything right here. He does not barrel the ball. He does not hit the ball hard. He does not generate exit velocity. He does not have good expected slugging, good expected batting average. This is not a good hitter. He doesn't strike out that much. He draws his walks, but it is entirely about the ability to hit the ball into the left field corner. On the road, he's not going to be nearly as appealing as he is in home games for DFS. This is a home game. I do think that the matchup against Clay Holmes could sap some of the power here for the Astros. But Isaac Paredes at 42, 3,000, going to be at least interesting in this stadium at all times. Jose Altuve remains Jose Altuve, 5,000, 3,500, differently priced slightly across sites. Second base and outfield eligible, going to be playing in the outfield this year. 20 homers, 22 steals, still an excellent slash line. Creator runs 27% better than average. Jordan Alvarez is one of the very best hitters in all of baseball for both power and hit tool and on base and just everything about the concept of hitting. 56, 41 across sites, totally worth it. Even against a, again, good pitcher who is potentially going to limit some home run power, you can absolutely play Jordan Alvarez as a one-off. He's a integral piece of Astros stacks. Just get there if you're going this direction. Christian Walker, 217 ISO last year, 26 homers. Been a good power bat over the last couple of seasons. 36 home runs 2 years ago, 33 in 2023, or 3 years ago, then 2023, 33. Dipped a little bit for power output, dipped a little bit around the average, but an excellent bat and coming in too cheap, 4,700 on the DraftKings slate. 35 full price on FanDuel. Jainer Diaz, another fantastic bat. This kid has one of the best hit tools in baseball, full stop. He's a catcher. 299, 325, 441 last year with 16 home runs in 619 plate appearances. He's got an opportunity to flirt with 320 home runs. He hit 23 home runs in just 377 plate appearances as a rookie in 2023. Jainer Diaz is no joke, and he costs 4,000 in the heart of the Astros lineup today. 29 on FanDuel, where you don't necessarily need catchers, but you can definitely play him like he's a first baseman. Jeremy Pena is a mix and match quality shortstop, 15 homers, 20 steals. The counting stats are fine, exactly league average for run creation. Cam Smith made this team out of camp. There's power there. He had a bunch of spring home runs. 2,400 on DraftKings at third, 2,000 dead min on FanDuel. Smith in the spring, 4 home runs in 43 plate appearances, 342, 419, 711. Meaningless spring baseball. But decent campaign last year. 134 plate appearances, hit 7 home runs, 2 stolen bases. Obviously a very small sample. And the rest of his numbers from last year came from college. Kid was at Florida State to begin last season. 2024, FSU, 322 plate appearances, 16 home runs, 4 steals. So we're well ahead of the curve. But he grades out for power. A lot of raw power, game power. We'll see how it comes along. There's a reason he's on this team now. Brendan Rodgers, kind of interesting. 2,000 dead min price. Hit 13 home runs, went 267, 314, 407 last year. Wasn't completely inept. Once upon a time, highly regarded guy. As a prospect anyway. Obviously, we're post hype at this point. But it's a interesting name to find at the bottom of this lineup at the minimum. 2,400 on FanDuel, more mix and matchy. Jake Myers, totally skippable. 3 games to go. Hit the like. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't before. I'm going to try and get through these 3 games in about 10 minutes. I do want to have most of that hour. Let's see. The Atlanta Braves with Chris Sale on the mound. So this is going to be difficult to get through quickly. The only detriment to Chris Sale's upside here is this 19.3% strikeout rate. And I know I've been harping on opposing strikeout rates throughout the entire show as far as pitching matchups go. But this is Chris Sale we're talking about. This is a different animal. I don't really worry about the 1 in 5 here when I'm dealing with 32.1% over here. 14.1% swinging strikes, 32.3% CSW. Sale, talented enough to find his Ks even against this Padres lineup. I like everything about the Sale spot today. 93 on DraftKings feels a little bit light as far as a price. 10-7 on FanDuel. He's 100 cheaper than Zach Wheeler, 300 cheaper than Paul Skeens. Really like the option to have him with just as much upside at a slightly lower price. So he's in my placeholder lineup right now. Love it. But, challenging matchup for sure. Michael King going up against the Braves. There are some Ks here for him for sure. He's a good strikeout pitcher, 27.7% rate last year, 2.95 ERA, but a 3.50 xFIP underneath it. Wasn't bad as far as home runs, was very good at limiting hard hits and exit velo. A little bit of a fly ball trajectory, but not egregious. I don't know that I want to get too deep into the Braves here going up against King in a pitcher's park. We're also dealing with a Braves lineup that has no Ronald Acuna for the start of the season. I will grab the confirmed version. Profar up at the top. Kelenic did make the lineup. He's hitting 9th. So I think Michael King, against this version of the Braves, could find some success. And this Braves team dramatically underperformed last season. Unless your name was Marcell Ozuna, if you were on the Atlanta Braves last year, you underperformed. 29 home runs out of Matt Olson with a 213 ISO. Still created runs 18% better than average. Better than average, but he is expected to be way better than average like he was 2 years ago. 54 homers, a 321 ISO, a 160 WRC+. Austin Riley had 37 homers, a 234, and a 127 that year. He went down to 19 homers in 469 opportunities, a 205 ISO. Still, again, good numbers, but not what he's expected. He had 30-plus home runs 3 years in a row going into last year. I really expect these two hitters to come roaring back to life this season. But if they don't, problems all year for the Braves. Jurickson Profar in the top spot had a very good year. It's undeniable last year. 24 homers, 10 steals, 280, 380, 459. We will see what happens with Jurickson Profar up at the top. 4,000, 3,000. Can't bring myself to say he's actually good yet, but he probably is. Highly playable if you're going to the Braves. That top four as a stack, as a unit, highly, highly playable. Even against King, there's enough upside if we get the good version of these guys. And there were things to like. I mean, all those dips in numbers still came with good barrel rates, hard hit rates. And again, 200-plus ISOs. We're just a little off the mark for who those guys are. Ozuna was great end-to-end. 15.6% barrels, 53.2% hard hits, 39 homers, a 247 ISO, carried this team. Ozzie Albies missed a chunk of the season with injuries, had his worst year, 9 home runs, 8 steals, just a 145 ISO. Another player that I fully expect to come roaring back for this team. Michael Harris, mediocre season, 16 homers, 10 steals. There's a lot more talent than that. This is a 2020 player at least, so I expect more upside out of him. Drake Baldwin filling in as a rookie catcher for injured Sean Murphy right now. Decently regarded stick as a catcher, but very much a work in progress. We'll see kind of thing. Orlando Arcia, disappointing year last year, came away with 17 home runs. Same home run total as he hit the year before, but this year was just better. 99 WRC plus versus 73. Much better in terms of the triple slash. So you could expect more from him. And then we will see what we get from Jared Kelenic. He's in the lineup right now, but when Acuna comes back, he's going to probably lose his job unless he's taken major strides because they've got Profar there now. 15 homers last year, still makes good contact. That's the one thing I'm clinging to with this player is the once upon a time pedigree of it and the 9+% barrel rates, the 45+% hard hit rates the last 2 seasons. There's talent there, but there's also a lot of struggles there. I do think he's playable if you're going to the Braves, but he's not a reason to go to the Braves. These three with their interesting home run totals is where I would go, and I would play this stack, right? This 3-man specifically, plus any of Albies, Harris, Profar, or Kelenic, I think is very playable on this slate and will not be that highly owned. But it's not like uber top priority because Michael King is very, very good. But I do think that this could get maybe a little bit sneaky. And you're getting them at not high prices, but also not really low prices. They feel a little bit cheaper on the FanDuel slate than they do on DraftKings, but it's very close. On the pod side, I really don't need much from this lineup. Luis Arias is a nothing hitter. I mean, that's not fair to say. He's won multiple batting titles. He's not a non-threatening DFS hitter. He's just a piece for correlated scoring. 314, 346, 392 last year. 109 WRC plus. 4 home runs, a .078 ISO. He's a singles hitter. He could get on 4 times and score all 4 times, and that's the day that you want him. But he needs a lot of help from his friends to deliver any kind of DFS value. His friends immediately behind him in the lineup, Fernando Tatis, Jackson Merrill, 2 excellent outfield options. 4,000, 5,500 is appropriate for Tatis. 21 home runs, 11 steals last year, and 438 plate appearances. Major upside beyond that. You can see it in the contact profile. 14.5% barrels, 55.4% hard hits last season. Major upside. Jackson Merrill, in my opinion, should have been the rookie of the year because Paul Skeens didn't pitch a full season. But here we are. I love Paul Skeens. You guys know that. I would have given the award to Jackson Merrill. I really would have. 24 homers, 16 stolen bases, a 208 ISO, 130 WRC plus. Tremendous wire-to-wire season. Manny Machado, Xander Bogaerts, a couple of veterans in the heart of the lineup. Machado just kind of is who he is. 29 homers, 11 steals last year. We're slowly starting the back-end decline for Manny, but still had 11% barrels, 48% hard hits. Still fantastic at 4,700 on DraftKings. 35 is appropriate on FanDuel. Bogey's cheap. FanDuel, 28, shortstop and second base eligible. 45 is a little bit up there at shortstop only for the DraftKings players, but Bogey's getting a lot of best shape of his life hype. I mentioned this yesterday because he's moving back to shortstop full time. So at least an interesting veteran bat who formerly good power, excellent OPS numbers on base plus slugging. So that's a interesting upside player, I think, in the heart of this lineup. Cronenworth, mix and match type guy. Yuli Gurriel, over 40, diminished skills. It'll be fun to watch him while he's here. Probably won't make it the full season with this team, if we're being honest. Brendan Lockridge, Elias Diaz. I just realized again I was doing the non-confirmed lineup. Sorry about that, guys. Oh, shit. This one's a little bit different. We pop that back on the screen. Obviously, we're not getting through all three of these games in 10 minutes. But, all right. So it's, I think, all the same guys, just in a slightly different order. Bizarrely, we have Tatis leading off ahead of Luis Arraez. That's got to be a mistake. There's no way in hell that's their real lineup. You guys have eyes on... Oh, shit. I'm sorry, guys. I just realized I still had that StatCast screen up through all of this. Apologies for that. There's the screen I've been ranting and raving at you about. Yeah, Duck, sorry. When I've got the chat off the screen, those notes could be helpful, but unfortunately not. Forgetting about ownership, what's the favorite stack of the day? That's a tough question because I think my favorite stack of the day might not be that highly owned. I kind of like that Red Sox stack. I really do. I think that Kansas City team got real interesting given the pitching matchup. And then the Angels are super popular as a value stack in the best matchup of the day. And that's a team we're about to talk about that I think is just underrated full stop going into the season. So I think they're really interesting too. Just to put a few names on the board. The top stacks tool is up on the website though. Gives you totals, points value, and value. Yeah, Giga Chalk. Exactly. The Angel. I was hoping when I was putting it together a couple days ago, like, oh, maybe the public will somehow miss it and other spots will. Nope. They're chalky. But the home run pick of the day at the bottom of the board, not all that chalky. All right, so the pods, if this is real, this is completely bizarre. I have no explanation for why they would hit Tatis ahead of Luis Arraez. That doesn't make any sense to me. But there it is. Machado, Bogaerts move up slightly in the lineup. Merrill moves down in the lineup, but that's still a viable spot as far as what he does. And then Gurriel, Cronenworth, Lockridge, and Diaz. Here are those Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, or whatever the hell they are these days. Where's this lineup? In the interest of time, there is nothing to talk about in the White Sox lineup other than Luis Robert Jr. You can see that he's in the 10-plus range in the home run model. This was the worst team in baseball history last year, and they did nothing at all in the offseason to improve it or change it in any way. They're going to come back and be just as bad as they were last year. Which bodes extremely well for the upside for Yusei Kikuchi at 6,900. He's one of our top projected pitchers of the day. I love him on FanDuel at 84. Absolutely can go there. This White Sox confirmed lineup has from last year, 27.9% average strikeout rate. Some of those are inflated a little bit by that 38.9 from Jacob Maya in a small sample, but we can take that out and still be at 26.5. Yusei Kikuchi, if nothing else, is a good strikeout pitcher. 12.8% swinging last year, 28% strikeout rate. Year before, 25.9 on the strikeout rate, 12.2 on the swinging. Similar numbers a year before that. His one issue over time has really been with, for a while he struggled with walks, but he's cut that down in half the last 2 years at 6%. And he struggles a little bit with power. But this team outside of Lubob has no power. I have no concerns about Yusei Kikuchi in this spot. I think he looks fantastic here. I picked him up off the wire, and he is in the lineup this week on the Dynasty team. And yeah, he made it to the waiver wire because we have contracts and everything, and he wasn't a fit for anybody at the draft. I spent a massive amount of fab to grab him. I like the upside for him continuing on through the season, too. He had 3.20 xFIP last year under that 4.05 ERA. You can see that Stuff Plus really grades his arsenal out really well. And he added a sweeper in the offseason. He's only used it a little bit through the spring. But if you can add that pretty dynamic sweeper with a lot of horizontal break to the arsenal, we're going to see a ratcheting up potentially in strikeouts. Could start today. Love the spot for Kikuchi. Again, nothing in this lineup outside of this one guy. And that's going to continue on throughout the entire season. Sean Burke is a no. He's very cheap, sure. Does not project well. Not a lot of numbers here, obviously. 28.9% strikeouts, sure. 1.42 ERA with a 3.47 xFIP in 19 innings, sure. Fire away with Angels bats. You can see some of the power coming through on a guy named Mike Trout in the heart of the lineup. Get him while he's here. I almost made him the home run pick of the day because it was the one day all season that I know for sure he's going to be active and in the lineup and not hurt. But I didn't go that route. Almost did. I made him the home run pick from the Angels in the home run article. The guy I picked for the home run pick of the day, lurking down here at the bottom of the lineup. I mentioned him earlier in the show. Part of that little special island of unique swingers. And you can... Island of swingers is a completely different context in a lot of corners of the internet. In this context, I mean that he swings the bat faster than most of the people in the league, more frequently fast than most of the people in the league. Last season, that resulted in his best numbers that we've seen in the show so far. And this is a kid who was, at one point, regarded as one of the top power hitting prospects in all of baseball, and he's still only about to turn 26. We're just about the border of post type with Adele, but he's there. 20 home runs, 15 steals, and 451 plate appearances last year. You just ignore the average and the on base because it's never going to be good. But the power's real. 11.7% barrels, 44.5% hard hits. Coming off of that potentially elite swing. It's kind of interesting. Home run pick of the day. Because why not? Taylor Ward off the top. And by the way, he is a lot lower owned than all the guys up at the top of the lineup. He is in my placeholder right now. 25 home runs last year out of Taylor Ward, a 111 WRC+, hitting ahead of Nolan Shanuel, who is very good at getting on base, as demonstrated by a 343 on base last year. 13 homers, 10 steals. Adding those two in front of fully healthy Mike Trout, it's going to do wonders for this offense. So I like their top three. I think it's a very competent top three. I love the acquisition of Jorge Soler. Hitting cleanup behind Mike Trout, sign me up. 21 homers in a dip last year, but we know there's immense 40 home run power upside lurking there. And the contact numbers did dip a little bit, but still 12.5% barrels, 44% hard hits. Tim Anderson, we'll see what we get. It was god-awful last season. Lost his job, almost washed out of baseball completely, but caught on here. Deadman Price hitting fifth today on FanDuel at shortstop. Playable. 2,500 at shortstop on DraftKings. Playable. We're not too far removed from, well, this season was also god-awful, but we're not too far removed from 301, 339, 395 with 6 homers, 13 steals over in a half season 2 years ago. Once upon a time, was very, very good. Luis Rengifo, kind of an interesting hitter. 6 home runs in 304 last year, stole 24 bases, gets on at a 347 clip. Mix and match type player with multi-position eligibility for a fair price in a lineup that we want to go to, and he's going to be one of the lower owned guys. That makes him appealing. And then Logan O'Hoppe, mix and match quality catcher, 20 home runs last year, decent amount of power. Kevin Newman, entirely skippable. And again, just don't play these guys. Last game up, 204. We got to get this one done. We've had these lineups for hours now. Love it. Playable pitching on both sides in this one. Pablo Lopez, 8,200, 8,800. Not bad. It's a reasonable price for a guy with a very strong strikeout to walk ratio. 25.6% versus 5.3% walks. Stuff Plus doesn't love the arsenal, but he's effective with it. And you can see that from time to time with Stuff Plus, where it doesn't really grade the pitches out uniquely or special, but a guy's just got that command over his arsenal and he just makes things work. 12.9% swinging strike rate kind of aligns with that. It defies that Stuff Plus rating a little bit. 29.2% strikeouts in a big step forward year in 2023. A little bit of a return to earth last year, but these numbers are very good just overall. So a highly playable pitcher against a weak Cardinals lineup. The one thing the Cards have going for them really is that they don't strike out a ton, but part of that's helped by 12.4% out of Brendan Donovan. Nolan Arenado, for as broken as he is overall, doesn't really strike out that much, but he's non-threatening these days. So there's not a lot of danger here for Pablo, and I think there's an appreciable ceiling. So I think he's playable at 82. I think he's playable at 88. Not my top priority pitcher. More interesting at the cheaper price on DraftKings, but easily playable. And then on the other side, Sonny at 78. DraftKings got it wrong. FanDuel got it right. 10-2 is the right price. 78 is way cheap. Sonny's a playable SP2 on this slate at that price. Going up against the Twins lineup with plenty of strikeouts in it. 22.5 for the average. Floated up a little bit by 36.4 from Matt Wallner over 261 plate appearances, but he's going to strike out around that rate. Sonny struck out 30.3% last year. He had a dynamite year. Underappreciated. 30.3% strikeout to 5.8% walk. Dynamite. 3.84 ERA, but a 2.82 xFIP under it. 13.4% swinging. Had a few home runs, but nothing tragic. He was very, very good last year. Deserves this price. Probably not going to go to him too much at that price. Deserves to be really popular at this DraftKings price. This Twins lineup is good. There's power there. We've got Byron Buxton and Carlos Correa currently healthy. Two other players who just need to be in the lineup. So it's not a completely non-threatening lineup like the Cards more are. But I definitely see the upside for Sonny to find some Ks here and put up a decent score. Wallner off the top, decent home run mark, hit 13 in just 261 plate appearances with a monster ISO and ludicrous contact numbers. 17.5% barrels and 53.2% hard hits. Definitely interesting, but an aggressive free swinger. Carlos Correa never was bad. 310, 388, 517, a 207 ISO in his half a season last year, hit 14 home runs. Whenever he's in the lineup, you can just go there. Price is a little high to start the year on both sides, 48.36. That's not inappropriate for who he is and what he can do, but with everybody else on the slate kind of priced down in similar situations, I would have expected to find him a little cheaper. Kind of like Buxton, 4,000, 3,400. We got 388 plate appearances out of him. There's no difference in the appearances from last year. 18 homers of 245 ISO. Everything that's always been good about Byron Buxton is still good. He just cannot stay on the field. Trevor Larnach, another guy with a 45% hard hit rate, 10+% barrel rate. 15 homers last year, 175 ISO, creator runs 21% better than average, highly playable. And then a lot of just mid-board type quality through the bottom of the lineup. Any one of those guys, even honestly any two of those guys in a 5-man DraftKings, perfectly playable in stacks, even down to Harrison Bader. Bader's at least reasonable for counting stats. 12 homers, 17 steals, and 432 is reasonable. Jose Miranda is a very good line drive hitter. Not much of a power bat overall, but he's a good run creator. He's a good average hitter. 115 WRC plus and 429 plate appearances last year. Doesn't strike out, 15.4% Ks, 4.2% walks. Lot of quality bat on ball out of Jose Miranda. Willie Castro fills positions on FanDuel, not so much on DK, where he's a lot less valuable today. 12 homers, 14 steals last year. Playable. Ty France, nobody's idea of a home run hitter, of a hero at the plate. He's a mix and match quality guy at best. On the card side, Lars Nootbaar is interesting off the top, as is Wilson Contreras, and then things kind of die out. Brendan Donovan's really just a utility guy with a good bat for a utility guy. As like a regular, a 3-hitter, we're not really talking about somebody that compelling. 14 homers last year, 278, 342, 417. Good on base skills. He's better as like a leadoff man correlated scoring type, but that's not his role right now. Nolan Arenado, as mentioned and talked about yesterday and throughout all of last season, per the new StatCast swing tracking metrics, the longest and slowest swing, or close to. I should look before I start swinging fake bats. Close to the longest and slowest swing in all of baseball. You can be one of those two things and still be very good. You cannot combine those two things and be any good at all anymore. 16 home runs last year out of Arenado, just a 123 ISO. It's gone, and I don't know if it's coming back. I don't know if that's fixable. Still doesn't strike out, but the power is gone. Alec Burleson, mix and match quality player. Ivana Herrera, an interesting catcher that we'll talk about throughout the season. Good bat at the catcher position, but not on a team that we're really looking at that hard today. Jordan Walker, there's talent there, but another post-type kid who kind of delivered half a season 2 years ago and then didn't deliver at all in a quarter of a season last year. We'll see what we get. Victor Scott stole 90-plus bases 2 years ago in the minors. Kind of washed out in the show last year in his opportunity. 155 plate appearances. Sub Mendoza, 219 on base is just brutal when your only tool is speed. Victor Scott, much like Billy Hamilton, walked so that Chandler Simpson can run. Chandler Simpson is the guy you want in this type of player. Kid's actually got a hit tool. Not in the show right now, unfortunately. Tampa Bay, by the way. Stole 100 bases last year in the minors. Scott could make some noise, but it's another guy that just needs help from his friends to really find it as far as DFS value. And then Mason Wynn is a playable shortstop to round out the show. 15 home runs, 11 steals, but you're not going to the bottom of the Cards lineup against Pablo Lopez at the very end of the show just to play Mason Wynn, are you? Home run pick of the day was Joe Adell. It's all up on the website. You guys absolutely rock out there. It's all the gods going with the Adell one-off. Got to get this win, says Adell. Definitely a swinger. Ooh, he sure is. Yeah, it's all the God. I would have thought that Arias was leading off. And again, as I said, as I put that in, that confirmed version of the lineup that popped up, I think that's a mistake. I'll get it corrected, assuming that it is. It makes no sense in the world to me that you would have Luis Arias hit second behind Fernando Tatis. We'll see. Seems like a mistake, but I'll clean it up if it is. That said, you guys, let me punch out of here. It's 2:12. FanDuel starts in less than an hour. I got to build some lineups. Got to get stuff updated on the site. Fortunately, we got all these lineups in. NBA coming later in the afternoon. NHL coming later in the afternoon. You can access those projections, plus these projections for baseball, plus the home run model, the stacks tool, all of it. Under $1 a day, all in. No per sport prices at Rotoscouts. Rotoscouts.com, guys. Check it out. Check out Gundacker's site, too. Guy deserves some love. Coming back into the game. Grinding it out with us. I appreciated him stopping by. Yeah, I think that's it. No basketball show later today, but all content and everything. Hop into the Discord with any basketball questions later in the day. I'll be all over it as soon as the projections go up. Thank you, Javier. You guys absolutely rock. Good luck out there tonight or this afternoon. Somebody go win something. Share screenshots when you do. And we'll be back tomorrow to do this all over again for a Friday slate. See you guys.